Monday, 4 p.m., Dan Warren and the UFO Garage Podcast. Wednesday, 4 p.m., Sean Raish is Citizen Witness. And on Friday, 3 p.m., Kent Bai versus Mick West. This week on the Singularity Lab, Tuesday, 4 p.m., UFOs and the Paranormal with John Russell. Thursday, 4 p.m., Cyber Warfare, USA versus China. And on Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Paradigm Shifts with Christina Gomez. Come aboard, let's get weird, this week on the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Hello, everyone. It's a couple minutes before 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and at the top of the hour, the Unidentified Celebrity Review will begin. I'm Ratherby Squidding. I provide some pre-show musings while you trickle in, and DOS Tapes provide some pre-show music. And have you noticed some of the production upgrades in recent weeks? Things like the awesome retro intro and calendar videos. Now, if you appreciate these things, consider finding the Patreon link for the show in the description below and divert some of your monthly entertainment dollars this way, if you're able. Super chats are also open, of course. I predict our guests are going to have a lot to say to each other, but I'll bring all those super chats on screen and do my best to get them all addressed. In other news, today is World UFO Day. Be sure to celebrate. 74 years, 1 week, and 1 day ago, Kenneth Arnold's sighting at Murray Island started the UFO era. 1 week ago, the UAP task force was launched, and I believe it marked an inflection point in our comprehension of the issue. It may be argued that the report didn't reveal a lot or really anything, but its impact is already massive. We've had serious hours-long programs on national TV discussing the issue. Watching them, it literally felt like the scene in a movie right after First Contact, when the protagonist tunes into the TV show and sees the nation react and discuss. Likely some backstage right now, may roll their eyes at the report and these shows. And, to some degree, I do understand that sentiment. But I love it. There wasn't much news in the shows, but I was incredibly engaged throughout. I can only imagine what someone new to the topic must be thinking after seeing something like that Discovery 3-hour live special. Maybe some of those people have since explored the topic and found their way here. I hope so. I'd encourage those, and anyone else for that matter, to find my channel, Ratherby Squidding, after the show. There you'll find a multitude of videos, each showing you the opening of a new rabbit hole related to these topics. But now, we have something TMZ and the Discovery Channel won't bring you. There's time for cheerleading, and there's time for serious, productive discussion. You're getting the latter today. And on that note of serious and productive, it's time to kick things off. Your hosts have one of those qualities in spades. The men who need no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. Luis Jimenez and Michael Mataluni.
Oh, hello. Oh my God, look at this. I forgot my tie, man.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
What is happening?
I forgot my tie. Hold on a second.
We're gonna allow Luis to
we're not
bring
official.
in.
We're not official until this
I should have
gets done.
stalled a couple more minutes.
No, you know what? I didn't even notice. It's not your fault. You did perfect, rather. You did perfect. This is all on me. But listen, we're gonna bring you in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I think should we have Rather here to help us moderate this debate?
I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, I always welcome Rather's opinions.
Okay, here we go. Ties on. Now we're official. All right. Okay. Rather, we'll bring you back in a couple minutes.
Yeah, I got my popcorn ready. I'm looking forward to this first hour.
This is going to be a fun one. This is definitely going to be a fun one. All right. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That is my co-host, Michael Mataluni. We're so happy you come aboard to get weird with us today. Before we get started, of course, I want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. And of course, want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the sick jams that you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. Also want to tell you guys, please check out the Patreon, check out the Super Chats. Every dollar you spend here goes toward making this show better. So please help us make this a full-time thing. We provide shows 5 days a week between the Singularity Lab and the Unidentified Celebrity Review. We've got some big announcements coming. Primarily, the Big Phone Home 2. We're doing it. It's coming within the next 90 days, so get ready. Details will be coming in the next 2 weeks. And along with that, we've also got merch as well, you guys. And we finally put the final stamp on all the merch. It's ready to go. I cannot wait for you guys to see it. It's hilarious. It's I think it's awesome stuff. So, all right, Michael, we've got a big day today. We've got a lot of stuff going on. So let's go ahead and bring on some friends, yeah?
Yeah, man, I'm super stoked today. For those of you just joining us, we've got an amazing show for you. We're going to have a productive debate today. And I think what's the most important thing to recognize is that we've got two incredibly passionate and intelligent folks, and we are going to do everything in our power to ensure we get everything you want, which is more data and good extrapolation. So without further ado, we've got since 2014, this gentleman has conducted over 1,200 Voice of VR podcast interviews featuring the pioneering artists, storytellers, and technologists driving the resurgence of virtual and augmented reality. He's a philosopher, an oral historian, and an experiential journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Kent Bye.
Hey, thanks for inviting me on, and thanks to Mick for agreeing to my provocation.
Yeah, I think Mick was a little worried at first, but I was like, nah, dude, don't worry, this could be great. And I think he trusts me enough to be like, all right, Lou, I got you, But I've never seen him. Not that I've ever seen Mick West nervous, but this is the first time where he's like, I don't know. All right, so let's see what happens.
I really want to do this. All right. And for those of you just joining, we've got the British-American science writer, skeptical investigator, and retired video game programmer. He is a creator of the website Contrail Science and Metabunk, and he investigates and debunks pseudoscientific claims and conspiracy theories related to chemtrails and UFOs. His first book is Escaping the Rabbit Hole. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mick West.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here again.
Yeah, man, you're starting to become a staple on the show.
Yeah, as people are going to start getting suspicious.
They already are, Mick.
Well, look, man, here's what I want, Mick. Honestly, one day, I want this to be the show. You'd be like, you know what, guys? I think you're onto something here. I think I might have been wrong. We'll see if that ever happens. That's the goal, but we shall see, right? Okay, so gentlemen, both of you I respect heavily. Both of you are insanely smart people. I know that, Kent, you have an insane Twitter history timeline that you of course will be sharing with us. But I guess where should we start? I mean, Kent, we'll start with you.
So I have some context, and I have a lot of slides. So maybe I'll share my screen. Then dig in. First, I want to just thank Mick for accepting this, and thanks for being here, Mick.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mick, did you bring any
first conversation I've really ever had with Mick? So
did you ever bring?
Dive in.
Did you bring any slides, Mick? There.
I did not bring any.
Oh,
slides, no. Sorry. I have visual aids. I can.
There it is. There's the visual aid. the famous iPod case. Oh, there it is. The bokeh. Man, we got them all. Okay, great. That's excellent. All right, so Kent, you're pulling up your screen now. Let's go ahead and add it. Yep, we can see it now. Go ahead and find. Is this where we want to start here?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Let's
this
do
is
it.
the Kent Bye versus Mick West debate on UAP evidence and skepticism. So just a little bit of background. I'm sort of introducing myself to Mick as well, because I don't know if he really knows who I am either. So I have an engineering background. I'm an oral historian. I do an emerging tech podcast, and I'm kind of an aspiring philosopher. I'm not trained as a philosopher. But I have this 42-month UAP Twitter thread. That's probably my biggest contribution to the UAP field. And then I have one interview I did after the UAP study, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. That's been up for a couple of weeks now. And I'm at KentBuy, and I do actually, I think I published, my slides are up on SlideShare. So if anybody wants to go to slideshare.com or slideshare.net/KentBuy, you can follow along and get a little bit of sneak peek of where I'm going to go. Feel free also.
Also, rather, if you can repeat that site one more time where the slides are, we'll have rather pop it in
it's
the
in the
chat
lower
so
right hand corner. Yeah, slideshare.net.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, slideshare.net/KentBuy. If you could pop that in the chat, rather, thank you.
All right. So why we're both here is this famous XKCD comic. Somebody is wrong on the internet. So I think Mick is both motivated by people being wrong on the internet, as well as I've been motivated by my perception of Mick being wrong. I think he's actually produced a lot of knowledge. So I think this is kind of a good place to start. But just to, I've had a lot of different sort of debates with Mick West on Twitter, and I found them all somewhat unsatisfying, just because there seems to be a certain point where either it just stops engagement or it's just low bandwidth, or I don't know. I'm happy to be able to have this like real-time conversation today. And by the way, Mick, if there's any moment that you want to jump in, please do jump in. I'm going to be sort of setting a bit of.
No, I'll let you lay out your initial thesis first, and then I shall jump on.
Okay, so I do oral history, so I do a lot of podcasts. I'm going to try to implement this Socratic dialogue and dialectic, and I'm also going to try my best to do a Steelman of mixed arguments, meaning I'm going to try to show the best representation and my understanding of mixed arguments. And please, at any moment, Mick, if I'm misunderstanding one of your arguments, please do jump in.
I will.
The only caveat here is I'm going to start with your weakest argument, and then we're going to dig in. But that's just to show a larger point that I'm making.
Sure.
But other than that, I'll be trying to show your strongest arguments that I've seen so far. Okay, so here's the bit of an agenda for today. We have an hour, so hopefully we'll be able to get through this. Starting.
So is Mick going to be able to speak today?
Totally. Like I said, this is a dialectic. I'm sort of going to be going through here, critiquing a number of different Mick's UAP hypotheses with Nimitz on his Mick ranking, the Gimbal rotating glare hypothesis.
We might have to set a part 2 for this. We'll see.
We'll see. We're 8 minutes in. I think we're on schedule here. So
okay. I'll shut up.
Oh, you have an appendix.
Stop interrupting, please. All right. So then Portal drops, go fast, and then we'll do a little bit of the OD&I, and then I have an appendix for people to kind of dig into some other stuff. We won't be able to really get into that. But this is just for reference, the provocation, which is basically a shot across the bow saying that, like, what I think Mick is doing is not really debunking. That my contention is that he's attempting to debunk the UAP videos, but he's actually potentially introducing more false sentiment and false claims into the discourse. So this was the DM that I sent back that Lou sent to Mick, and to Mick's credit, he's like, "Yep, sure, let's do this." And so I want to just set a little bit of context from my understanding of Mick. His goal here on his website is to remove nonsense and false sentiment from, and to expose false claims or pretensions. This is on his personal history of debunking on Metabunk. So he's trying to remove these false sentiments from this discourse. And there was a conversation where he says, if I'm removing one thing that's a false piece of evidence, then we all move closer to the truth, no matter what your underlying feeling is. Okay. So far, so good, Mick?
Sure, yeah. No, sounds good.
Okay, and then there's a bit of an evolution in Mick's debunking from Morgellion's Watch to Metabunk into this book that he wrote. So I think on the whole, there's probably a lot of ways in which that Mick has been doing a lot of debunking of a lot of these things that are out there, 9/11 conspiracy theories, contrails, lots of stuff that probably deserves debunking. Now, the UAP issue, I think this is where it starts to get into, like, okay, how much debunking is happening here? So I wanted to start with this because I think it's actually an interesting turning point in the history as I was kind of looking into this evolution from Mick. This is going back to the beginning of January 2017. Leslie Keane published this sort of hyperbolic article saying groundbreaking UFO video just released by Chilean Navy. Well, within a day on Metabunk, basically Mick's like, nope, this is explained, and basically kind of figures it out. And it turns out that whoever the different UFO people were doing it, they try to sort of debunk the debunking, but then there wasn't any resources. And as of it stands right now, as far as I can tell, Mick's sort of debunking kind of stands, right? So he put out a video on January 17th kind of explaining that, right? So this is the beginning of 2017. Then
I
you.
wouldn't leap in real quickly. I wouldn't characterize it as saying it just simply stands because they couldn't find a response to it. I'd say it's 100%.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think anybody can really seriously argue that this is not the correct answer to this particular case.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I don't know the details of this, but I think you're sort of elucidating on a deeper point that I'm going to be diving into later. But we'll sort of bookmark that. But thanks for that that sort of definitive debunking, according to Mick. Okay, so then at the end of December 16th, 2017, Lisa Keene comes back with Helen Cooper and Ralph Blumenthal, and there's yet another video that has this sort of rotating glare. It's rotating here. And then Mick publishes just a few days later this first video, UFO rotating or infrared glare. His thesis is that it might be a fighter jet that's just sort of a friendly fighter jet, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's rotating. It's probably the sort of gimbal mechanism, and as it's rotating, it's sort of an illusion that this thing is actually rotating. It's actually just sort of a mundane jet and a flare, and there's nothing all that special about what's happening in the video. So hopefully I was able to kind of recap that. And
Sure.
that sort of brings us up to sort of diving in. So Mick, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to sort of repeat.
No, that's my kind of leading hypothesis for what we're seeing. I'm pretty sure that we're just seeing a rotating glare. I have that same camera there on my desk, and I use it for visual aids all the time. And I wouldn't say I've solved that problem in the same way that I've solved the Chilean Navy thing. The Chilean Navy thing, I pretty much bet my life on that one. It's 100%. I mean, it's exactly in the right spot at the right time. The radar matches, everything matches, the size of the configuration of the engine matches, the contrails match. The glare thing, I wouldn't say I've explained it. I would say I have debunked some claims that have been made about the video.
Perfect. Okay. So we're kind of up to speed with your successes within the debunking area. And now I'm going to get into where I have some contentions with some of your work. Okay, so personal history of debunking. Like I said at the top, I was going to start and do mostly Steelman. I'm going to make an exception here and actually start on what I think is Mick's worst argument, and then kind of go from there. So I think Mick's worst argument is on the Nimitz TIC TAC. It's pretty just arbitrary. It almost seems like he's kind of making stuff up. His basic argument, as best as I can reconstruct it, I don't know if there's actually a canonical video, but I sort of pieced together what I got from kind of hearing from here and there. But essentially, Mick is saying, well, Fravors' size estimation could have been wrong because the TIC TAC was a novel, featureless object. There could have been this big perceptual illusion of it being big and far away when it was actually small and close. Rather than 40 feet long, it could have been like 20 feet long. And even though he's a great pilot, that doesn't mean he can never, ever, ever make a mistake. And that Mick would bet that it's not a craft that accelerated into hyperspeed, and it's probably a fancy drone, target, balloon, or perceptual illusion. Also, he admits that he kind of doesn't know what happened. Mick, I don't know if I missed anything there, if there's anything you want to change.
That essentially is my broad assessment of Fravor and Dietrich's encounter with the TIC TAC object. It doesn't really cover the radar data, and it doesn't cover the video. So but that's my assessment of that particular encounter. Mostly Fravor's encounter as well, because what Dietrich saw, she only saw a 10-second snippet of what Fravor saw, and Fravor saw like a 5-minute thing. Right. So when I'm describing this whole mirroring illusion thing, I'm really talking about what Fravor saw and not what she saw. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go on into some of my other complaints, I guess. So there's some different discussions.
Wait, was that a complaint?
No, well, I don't think this is a good explanation for the Nimitz. So I don't think that
well, no, me neither.
So I don't think that this is a good debunking, and I would argue that what you're doing is actually adding more noise.
It's adding another hypothesis that I thought was plausible. So I think saying adding more noise is a bit iffy. Like if you add noise, saying, well, maybe it's aliens, isn't that adding noise?
Well, I'm not saying it's aliens. I'm saying we don't know.
No, I'm not saying you are, but other people do. So are you going to critique them for bringing aliens into the picture when we don't know, we don't have enough data? I mean, you said you had a problem with this explanation.
I'll get into. Let me just sort of go for it a little bit. I'll get to the alien stuff later because I do have some slides on that.
Just to be clear, though, you're just saying you think this isn't a very good explanation.
Correct. I think that I trust Fravor and Dietrich more than you on this one.
Okay, well, I agree it's not a very good explanation, but I wouldn't consider it to be introducing noise. I consider it to be introducing a hypothesis that should be considered.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so
that's pretty fair. And may I just say, if you could go one slide back, I do appreciate that you're using my show as an example.
Canonical.
So, good work.
Quite
Good
canonical.
work.
Good. Yeah. I watched a number of videos, so you'll
recreate it.
see different stuff.
There we go.
Well, let's keep moving on. We've got lots to dig into here.
Okay.
I'm sure. Okay, so here's your basic thesis here. I'm sure people are honestly describing what they saw, but history has taught us that I know what I've seen is a belief that can be independent of the accuracy of the recollection. The human mind is not a perfect recorder, but it can feel like one. So you're basically saying that more or less that you're not, and I think this is true. Like we would rather have empirical evidence rather than someone's eyewitness testimony. So this Nimitz case is largely kind of eyewitness testimony. So I think that's what you're sort of elucidating there. Now he says,
well, no, I was saying what I was saying in that tweet, that the human memory is not perfect. I mean, obviously you can conclude from that something else, but that wasn't what I was trying to say.
okay.
It's just essentially just that if someone tells you something that they remember, it might not be a high fidelity reproduction of what actually happened.
Okay, right. And I as Dietrich has talked about memory, and my work in virtual reality, as we remember stuff, we reconstruct it, and it's not perfect. It is flawed. So I don't
And
have.
clearly there are differences within the various accounts of the Nimitz encounter, so not everyone is remembering it the same. Like, Kevin Day says that there was a barrel roll involved, and there wasn't.
Right. Okay. Well, let's keep moving on here because I don't have any disagreement with that. Let's get to the juicy stuff. So the issue. So Nick says the issue for me is that there actually craft that have had the 5 observables. So he's kind of sort of skeptical about this whole concept of 5 observables, largely because we haven't seen any really good evidence or data. Or we're just seeing things that look like they have the 5 observables. Some people say we have so much evidence that it might be real. And he sort of disagrees that if you're looking at things individually, that it could just be sort of radar glitches. And so that's sort of setting the larger context as to maybe having a little more skepticism on this whole concept of the 5 observables, mostly because we haven't really had any sort of data that sort of verifies it in any kind of incontrovertible way. And I agree with that. So the 5 observables, just as a recap: anti-gravity, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, low observability, and transmedium travel. And this is from the History Channel's sort of graphics and the whole show. Now, there was an iTeam exclusive. There's some report. I suspect this might have come from BAST. It's not an official report. It's not been officially vetted. George Knapp released it. It seems plausible, but there was this sort of assessment that they're doing here, and they're kind of going through. And what I see this report is doing is that it's basically saying, well, the Nimitz actually does have all 5 of these observables. It has low observability, it has the anti-gravity, it has the instantaneous acceleration, it has hypersonic velocity, and it has transmedium travel, right? Now, I think the provenance of this document is not great. So we can sort of, agree to disagree that this is just sort of like, just a hypothesis.
It says right there, sorry, excuse me real quick, like it says that they're possibly demonstrated. And I don't think you can really say demonstrated the 5 observables. And one of them is possibly demonstrated going underwater. What evidence was there of that?
Well, so yeah, I don't know. I think this gets into the area where there may be. This was the investigation that I presume that BAST did afterwards.
I mean, I would agree it goes very fast, and I would agree that it appears to hover based on eyewitness accounts, and I agree it has low observability, but I think low observability is a bullshit criteria because that's just basically saying all UFOs are hard to see, which is just a function of the low information zone.
What about anti-gravity, Mick?
Well, anti-gravity just means hovering, which is what I mentioned.
Okay.
So my sort of thesis is that it's possible that, given what the testimony is from Fravor and Dietrich, that given the 5 observables, it's possible that the Nimitz, using this great little badge from the signal, could potentially exhibit all of these, right? But all the data for that is going to be sort of classified.
Everything is possible.
Yeah. So my question to you, Mick, is based upon this description that you have here, how do you claim that what you're doing here is actually removing false pieces of evidence?
No, I don't. I think what I'm doing here is presenting a possible hypothesis that might explain the events. When I'm removing false pieces of evidence, it's usually things where people have made particular claims about evidence that don't hold up to scrutiny. Like with the Nimitz TIC TAC video, I think I would say I've debunked certain claims about that. The claim that it shoots off to the side with high velocity by noting that the camera is just losing lock and then the object continues off to the side with the same angular velocity that the camera was previously tracking, and that Underwood just basically was cycling through the camera modes and he lost lock. This isn't that type of thing. This isn't debunking. This is just postulating a hypothesis that I feel is worth considering.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that, like I said, this is what I think is probably your worst case, and I think generally it's the least amount of information that's out there. So
people asked me what I thought, and so what am I supposed to do? Just throw up my hands and say I have no idea? It's a possible explanation, and I think it's probably more likely than aliens.
Right.
Well, I think the
Nobody
question.
mentioned aliens, of course, but I still think it's more likely.
Right. I just wanted to point out real quick, and I thought I thought this might have been what the point Kent was making was that your goal is to debunk, and I think some people can get confused when you throw out a hypothesis.
Right.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not like my entire life is devoted to every word I say is trying to prove somebody wrong. Sometimes I'm just trying to figure things out. I mean, that's really the ultimate goal here, is to try to figure out what these things are. And so when I'm investigating a UFO case, it doesn't mean I am just trying to falsify the ET hypothesis. The way I investigate is figuring out what's actually there. We don't have enough information in this case to actually make a determination of what's actually there, but we can still put hypotheses out there and see if they are falsifiable.
Okay. All right, that's fair enough. I'm happy with that. Let's move on.
May I just comment on one thing? I'm sorry, real quick.
Very quickly, yeah, because there's a lot of things to get through here.
Yeah, no, I got the thing that I kind of always find a little issue with is that you call it. It feels like you're always fighting this ET hypothesis, when I feel like that hypothesis is not really being thrown out by the people who are talking about
I see what you're saying, and that's a point I get a lot. So what I would say there is what I'm fighting here, not really fighting, but presenting an alternative hypothesis, is the advanced technology hypothesis. The hypothesis that it actually is moving at over 100 Gs or 1,000 Gs or 5,000 Gs in the case of the radar data. That is the hypothesis that those are accurate readings, and this thing actually represented a real object physically moving from one spot to another. I'm presenting an alternative hypothesis to that. Now, with the the extreme technology, that could be like a foreign embassy, or it could be like extraterrestrials, or it could be ultra-terrestrials, or whatever. But it's the incredible motions that I'm presenting an alternative to.
Got it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on, because Mick, I know you've talked about your process of how do you say it? Occamic.
Like Occam-ic.
Occameric ranking.
Like Occam's razor, but with an ick on the end. Occam-ic.
It's hard to say. Okay. I have a problem with it. I don't know if I fully understand it.
Ranked list.
So
let's just call it ranked list.
I'm going to sort of give my understanding of it. So my understanding is that you are trying to sort of bubble rank the different hypotheses, and like the most likely is rising to the top. Is that right?
Well, yes. I mean, obviously that's what would happen, but it doesn't mean that it's the only answer when it rises to the top. That's the whole point, is that you have a list of things. Often you have like a 1 and 2 that are very close. Like I flip-flop sometimes with some of them. Like when I originally looked at the Go Fast video, it was like bird was the #1 hypothesis and balloon was the #2 hypothesis. More analysis, flip that around, and now I'm kind of like more like 90% balloon and maybe like 5% bird and then 5% other.
Okay, and so I guess one of the things I have a question on is that if you seem to be pretty against the ET hypothesis, how do you prevent that sort of seeping into as a bias against that into your bubble ranking?
Well, it's very difficult, I guess, because my experience has been that the ET hypothesis has not been a good explanation for any of the cases in the last 70 years. It's not really been a #1 hypothesis. Just simply because it's an extraordinary thing that requires imagining essentially an entire extra universe of things, whereas the other hypotheses are just a fairly small number of things. From Occam's razor, do not multiply entities unnecessarily. It naturally, when you do the bubble comparison, like saying is this thing higher than the other on the list, it naturally it seems to be lower on the list, so it goes down to the bottom. Do I have a bias against it? I mean, sure, perhaps, but I'm quite open about what I think and the reasoning I use and the various tests and whatever I put out there, but I keep it on the list. I keep it there as a possibility.
Okay. Well, I guess the problem that I have is my understanding of the intelligence analysis. Richard Hewer Yeah, something called the analysis of competing hypotheses, which I came across a number of years ago. I attended an open source intelligence conference, and also just talking to different people that are from the intelligence community. This is a pretty standard method. Have you heard of Hearer's analyses of competing hypotheses?
Yeah, I was just reading that the other day. Someone else sent it to me. I kind of liked it. That chapter. Is that the?
It's a free.
I read the last chapter, which has kind of an executive summary, and it does actually talk about something that's kind of similar to the Archamic ranking. Like you make a list of things and then you kind of sort them, but they talk more about eliminating things and then promoting things.
Correct. That's my beef with your academic thinking, is that's doing actually the opposite thing of what you're supposed to do, which is trying to disprove the hypotheses, which means that you're trying to actively go out and disprove your hypotheses rather than improving it. So in some ways, your academic ranking system is kind of creating a confirmation bias feedback loop.
Really? It's a list of hypotheses, and we're comparing one against the other. But how would that create a confirmation bias feedback loop?
Well, I guess I'll give an example. For I'm going to take your rotating glare, and I'm going to try to disprove it in the next section.
Yeah.
So I'll sort of give a live example of that. But in other words, there's a whole area of intelligence analysis. And there's specific best practices, and some of the things you're doing are not part of the best practices. That's my.
I kind of liked that chapter when I read it. I don't think I read the chapter 8. I read the last chapter in the book, but I didn't really have a big problem with it.
Okay, well, I recommend checking it out. So here's the thing where there's sort of aliens that you're talking about. Aliens are not on the list. They're on the list. It's just not very high. There's no evidence of aliens. That's all fine. But then sometimes you make these statements that this is definitely not aliens. It's no aliens, and I think that's actually going too far. I don't think that you can actually claim that there's not aliens or it's not aliens.
Yeah,
I don't think you've disproved.
Right, but I think a lot of what people have problems with me is kind of a function of Twitter. I don't want to use that as an excuse too much, but it kind of is the reason I put these short things out, and sometimes late at night. And if you want to get to what I'm actually saying, ask me here and now what I actually think.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that you're sort of using hyperbolic language that is making conclusions above and beyond the evidence that you've been able to show. You have not disproven the ET hypothesis, and you have not in any situation here. So when you say not aliens and no aliens, you're giving an illusion as if that you've done something to kind of disprove it, but you really haven't.
Yeah, right. I mean, I could see that, but you're kind of talking about it's the way that you say it, and you phrase your tweet wrong. I mean, like these are kind of minor points that we could thrash out. And,
well, it's language, though. I don't. It's not just. It's language.
So you're
reflection of a deeper.
Arguing, you're kind of quibbling with the way I'm communicating with the public.
Well,
here.
it's not just that. You are actually going above and beyond what you know. When you say not aliens,
but in this language. It's you're just saying, like, I shouldn't have said no aliens. I should have said, based on the evidence, there is almost certainly no aliens. It seems very unlikely that there are aliens.
That was
that tweet is 280 characters. So
I know. If you read my tweet count, if you go read my tweet count, I think on almost every single tweet I have, it almost goes up to the very limit. There's actually a lot.
Editing it and fitting things in, but in that you kind of lose things, and unfortunately.
Okay.
And Mick does clarify his point in that upper left tweet, right, saying that they are on the list.
But this is
not very high.
Yes. I guess that's what that's why I put it in there. I'm not trying to just cherry pick, because Mick does show sort of a nuance here. But I guess there's also
like in the Corbell video, I say no aliens, but obviously it could be aliens. Any video could show aliens. It's kind of like a moot point.
I don't think you have any right to be able to say no aliens. That's my point.
Well, I would just like to say I think you think it's a moot point, Mick. But I think the problem is there are people out there who watch your tweets and specifically the people who say they are experiencers or who have direct knowledge or whatever. Those are the people that are going, how can you possibly be so certain? Yeah, and I think that's what people feel like is unfair.
It's an issue I get all the time, and I essentially you've got to add these ridiculous qualifiers all the time.
Well, hold on. Nick,
almost certainly, there is no evidence of, and these things. So not aliens, I think, pretty much covers it.
Okay, here's my argument. Part of the skepticism, the tradition of skepticism, is suspending judgment. When you say no aliens or not aliens, that's doing the opposite of suspending judgment. That's actually declaring a disbelief. That's different than the tradition of skepticism.
In that tweet,
skepticism tradition is all about suspending judgment.
I want to defend Mick here. I think that in both those tweets, it's pretty obviously implied no evidence of aliens in these situations.
No, it's not. The bottom left one is absolutely not. It says not aliens, rather. It
Well,
says
yeah.
not
I, I actually think there's 100% evidence that this is not aliens.
But look at the context.
Okay.
It says a quick analysis of the new
think
video.
that. You're just quibbling with the way I'm
Well,
communicating
no,
with
I
people
think. Well,
reading on Twitter.
let me go for it. Let's move on. I don't.
I've said many times that aliens are on the list. There it is. Right.
I know, but you're
left.
basically eliminating from the list here in these tweets, and a rhetorical strategy.
Well,
that's
if you just read them by themselves,
Nick,
yes.
Nick,
Take
yes,
them out
Nick,
of
you're being
context.
Nick, this is careless. It's not good debunking. It's not being a good skeptic. You need a. Okay, I'm going to move on because I think what I see here is that you also have this sort of shaming thing that you do sometimes, like they believe in aliens, or who said anything about aliens? Well, pretty much everyone.
Oh, that's ridiculous. That's the very specific thing that we're talking about there, because people are always saying, I didn't mention aliens. This is mentioning a specific thing in the UFO community where people try to avoid talking about aliens, and they say, who's talking about aliens? And so I'm calling that out. I'm not mocking them for talking about aliens. I'm talking about this trope that they have of saying, oh, nobody mentioned aliens. And so that's what that's about.
There's a deeper sociocultural stigma that came up here, and I think that some of the rhetoric sometimes, when you start to say, oh, they believe in aliens, they believe in the extraterrestrial hypothesis, it's sort of, it could be read in certain circles in a way of basically making fun of
Yeah, well, you can read things different ways, and people will, and you can't please all of the people. But my intent here isn't to mock people. I'm good friends with lots of people who are UFO experiencers, and I respect their experience, even if I don't think they actually saw aliens.
Well, here in this article, you say, I study UFOs and I don't believe the alien hype. So there's a part of you, rather than, there's three doxastic positions: belief, disbelief, or suspended judgment. Most skeptics are suspending judgment, but you're kind of in some ways putting yourself in the disbeliever realm. I don't know if that's...
I don't believe the alien hype. It doesn't say I don't believe in aliens.
Okay. All right. So I'll let that go because that's fair. Okay. So that's the problem I had with the Achaemenid ranking. Let's move into sort of the core thesis, the problem that I have with the gimbal rotating glare hypothesis.
Okie doke.
Okay. All right. So my recap again is that there was what you say is some sort of distant plane. It's sort of mundane, either a friendly plane or a commercial plane. That it might be a fighter jet, and that just because we see in this video a rotation, that it could actually be sort of an illusion based upon this glare that is happening in this rotating gimbal that is also rotating, and that you've shown many different times this sort of rotating glare, right? So that it's not sort of anything other than a mundane prosaic event.
No, I mean it's showing that the rotation is probably a rotating glare and not a rotating object.
Got it. Okay. So, and then this was just a few days after the very first New York Times article.
That's right.
And you said it might be that it's a fighter jet, and then this doesn't prove the UFO is just a distant plane with some infrared glare. So at this point, this is from the Psychology of Intelligence analysis. So back in December 2017, where would you say your likelihood of how confident you were in this theory was at?
Which theory that it might be?
The rotating glare theory.
That it was rotating glare theory.
You said it sort of might be.
Well, I think I became more confident over time after I did some tests, and but probably like 80% maybe.
Okay. So then you have this new footage that comes out from the New York Times. They released high resolution. So you produced a new video in June 2019, and you say the entire effect is just a camera effect. Is it solved? We don't know what it is. But the shape is solved, the rotation is solved, the glow and aura is solved, and also we're looking at something hot, something like a jet miles away, and there's nothing to indicate any advanced technology or aliens. So there's an increase of your confidence here, just even the language of you saying that it's solved,
Yes, it's very specific though when I'm talking about there. I'm saying that the shape is solved, that the shape is a glare, and the rotation is solved because we can see the light field in the sky rotate. The aura is solved, but that was a different thing. That was like comparing it to other infrared footage, and you see the white aura around it. And that it's obviously looking at something hot, we know that already, and it's something like a jet engine miles away is true, and nothing to indicate any advanced technology, whereas before, people thought there was because they thought that this thing couldn't aerodynamically go on its end. So yes, I agree with all of that, but it's quite specific.
Okay, perfect. So I think I also noticed that there was an increase of your confidence. over time on this issue?
Yeah, it's more a refinement, I guess, like getting more specific in various different parts of it, whereas before it was kind of a general hypothesis. But yeah, it's more detailed hypothesis that explains more. So I would say it's more likely.
Okay. So here's a couple of clips that I personally also have a problem with, where you say things like, so what we're looking at is a tail of the end of a jet plane. First of all, we don't know that it is, but you're saying on national TV that it is. I think you're going too far to saying that it is.
I agree. I should have had more time there, but unfortunately I had about 4 minutes to explain all 4 videos. I thought I only got to 3 of them. But,
So there's a compression, I guess a parallel here between both Twitter and national TV, where you say things like, all of these things have very reasonable explanations. Nothing to worry about, essentially only the ones we have video evidence for, right?
I agree with that. That's not a compression. That's true. They all have very reasonable explanations, like plausible hypotheses that fit the facts.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
All right. So now I'm going to try to disprove your hypothesis. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Let's do it. Well, first, actually, before I do that, you had a conversation with Lou Elizondo, and it's a very interesting interaction here. Essentially, you asked Lou about your rotating glare hypothesis. He was not familiar with it. You tried to explain it to him over the course of over a minute. There was things that there's like a miscommunication where he didn't watch all the videos. It probably would be better to watch the video than you try to explain it on the spot. So there's like a back and forth, and then eventually you said, "Well, I'm looking at basically the tailpipe of an F-18." He's like, "No, I understand what you're saying. I have to respectfully disagree." And then I saw you a number of times say that Lou Elizondo didn't even look at my theory. What are they doing? It was almost you were almost using it as like a justification of that your theory was good, like so good that that Lou wasn't even looking at it. And what are they doing over there?
No, I mean that doesn't make any sense. Why would it be so good that they wouldn't look at it?
Well, I guess I heard you say it a number of times that Lou.
I just think he hadn't looked at it. That's all. I don't think that said anything about it. That says something about him.
Okay. Well, I guess here's the question that I have, though, because when I hear you talk about that interaction, I often hear you sort of bring up that part that Lou didn't understand that. But I guess here's the question.
Telling.
What's that?
I think it's very telling that he wasn't familiar with the
rotating
glare hypothesis.
What was it telling?
It means that they've never actually considered it.
Okay.
When it seems to me and a lot of other people that it's a fairly obvious explanation for what we're seeing on screen. So it shows to me that the quality of their analysis really isn't very good.
Got it. Okay, that's the point I was trying to draw out.
Okay.
Now, here's where I want to try to ask you a question. Can you go back in time and try to steelman what Lou Elizondo's response to you was?
Yeah, he's saying that he has secret information that I'm not privy to, but he was, that demonstrates that it was actually a rotating object.
Okay, so what he said, I have some different things. There's more than just the video itself. His main point that I want to draw out here is that we try to avoid doing single source reporting. So in other words, that there's lots of other contextual information from gun camera footage to eyewitness testimony to HawkR radar information to Spy 1 data from the Princeton. And so when I hear you talk about your interactions with Lou, I don't hear you really integrating the fact that you're only looking at one piece of information in a much broader context that you don't have full access to.
Well, you think I should be bringing that up all the time?
Absolutely.
People make specific claims about the video, and I analyze those specific claims that people make. People say this video shows a rotating object, and they don't say this video shows a rotating object and I have some secret information about it that proves this. They say it without the secret information that it shows that. Now, sure, maybe there is secret information. I doubt that there is secret information, and I think Lou may be exaggerating, the other things that he knows about this particular case. And I would stand by my hypothesis there. But yeah, no, obviously, if there is other information, that might disprove my argument. But I'm not aware of this information, and Lou's claims about it are pretty vague. So I've got to go with what I know.
Well, so that's what you say here in this response. It'd be great if I had the information. But my point is that if there may be this other data, but my point is that other people are taking the video itself, i.e. Chad Underwood and the Unidentified television show. They're saying, looking at just the video itself, that they can say that there's something amazing that's happening by just only looking at the video.
Well, which video are you talking about now? Chad took the FLIR video, and you were talking about the gimbal video.
Oh, well, I guess I thought you were talking about, this is a sort of a direct quote from this conversation. So whatever contextual information that you're talking about with Lil Elizondo, you specifically mentioned Chad Underwood and Unidentified as the sort of moving off screen. So I'm just sort of
that's a different video. That's not the gimbal video, though.
Oh, yeah, that's the FLIR video, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so both of them, I think, are both of the FLIR and the gimbal both rely upon there being a friendly jet, though, correct? Like a friendly.
Well, some other jet.
Some other jet, right? So some
probably
sort of
friendly. I mean, like it'd be very unlikely for an adversary jet to be in the neighborhood. It may be a military jet or it may be a civilian jet.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start to disprove this hypothesis now.
Okay, wait, before you do that, Ken, real quick,
Go ahead.
just because we're halfway through the show and I want to remind everybody, if you're enjoying this conversation, do me a favor, share, like, subscribe, tell people that there's a very good conversation happening right now. Mick, are you feeling good? How you feeling? Just want to do a quick check on you. You doing good?
Yeah.
Kent, you doing good?
I'm doing good.
No, I'm looking forward to
look,
this,
man, I'm
this
really
thinking.
enjoying the hell out of this conversation. I'm loving the slides. People and the folks are loving the slides. We have a poll going up to see who's quote unquote won the debate. So we're having a great time.
Well,
so let us continue.
If people gain knowledge, then everybody wins.
Yes, this is a wonderful conversation. And hopefully we'll walk away both saying, hey, I didn't know that about Mick. I didn't know that about Kent. And we can have a good day for the rest of the day. But yeah, I love it. This is so much fun. So continue, please. Sorry.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to click this hide. Okay, good. That was.
By the way, this is your show today, Kent. This is the Kent by Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Does Mick get to come back next Friday with a slide deck?
Yeah, if he wants to. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, the slides are fine. I mean, they're all.
I'm just saying. I want to be fair.
Well, I'm trying to steel man Mick's arguments and then break them down, and it's easier to do with slides. All right, let's move on, because I think that West's rotating glare theory solely relies upon this being a friendly FA-18 jet or a commercial plane.
Sure.
Okay, that's fair, right?
Wait, so we're talking about gimbal now, right?
Either one. I'm going to say either one.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I'm on the gimbal now, so let's just do gimbal, okay? Because they both sort of happen at the same time, right?
You probably got a much better case with FLIR 1, though.
All right. Well, let's keep going. All right. So this is from a tweet from Ryan Graves. He says, "I recognize this isn't fair of me to be able to do this. However, there's no argument because of the sensor, radar, data link, PID, IFF, airplane schedule, geographic location data, all these additional information, pieces of information that are basically telling the fighter jets who's friendly and who's not. So let's break that down a little bit. So on the SA, which is the situational awareness screen, there's a quote saying there's a whole fleet of them. So with the gimbal, there's more than just one. So there's other things going on there, right? And there's a great video from AlphaCheck. I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to AlphaCheck yet, but basically he goes through a whole sensor running through all the different sensors, radar, data link, link 16, and shared situational awareness, meaning that if there is something that's being tracked, they pretty much know whether it's friendly or not, right? Sure. So I think even at this point, if there is something that is being tracked and it's not already in the system, then that's a problem. So my assumption is that anything that is in a situation like this has already automatically eliminated whether or not it is a friendly. Now let's go through some of the other points of why I'm saying that. Because there's also the IFF, that's the identification friend or foe, that's the ATX 111. And then there's also these positive identification systems, the PIDs that Ryan Graves is talking about. All these things are communicating like who's friendly and who's not. So there's situational awareness there. Sure. Also, there's been lots of different discussions around that there was jamming, active jamming from Chad Underwood.
You're going back to this is the FLIR 1 case.
Well, I'm sort of, I think it's unclear as to which ones, because I know that Nimitz and
AlphaCheck's argument was really about the FLIR 1 video, because there's more information about that.
In the preliminary assessment of the UAP that came out from the Office of Director of National Intelligence, there's this phrase that says, in a small number of cases, military aircraft systems processed radio frequency energy associated with UAP sightings. In other words, they're getting jammed. They're receiving RF signals.
No, that's a terrible reach. It means that radio frequency information came from these objects that they thought, and they recorded it. It could be just like the radio signal. They're transmitting some kind of radio data, like consumer drones transmit a video signal back to the base. It doesn't mean that it's jamming.
So that's an assumption that I'm making that may be wrong. But my point is that there's other eyewitness testimony here from a number of different pilots who have said with some of these objects, they were jamming. And if it was a friendly jamming's an act of war, Mick. And so if you're getting jammed,
Yeah.
that's
There
not a
was jamming.
friendly jet. It's something that's definitely not like a prosaic jet.
I know this is Alpachek's argument, but I disagreed with him, and I've explained a few times why I disagree with him. And basically, like what we have on the video is just a pure visual thing. We don't have any indication that it was a track acquired from a radar lock, and if we do, we don't know if it's a track acquired from an accurate radar lock. You just said there was jamming. Talk about all this jamming. So if the radar was being jammed, how do we transition from radar to the ATFLIR? And if we go back to the ATIP report that was carried out by interviewing the people who were there, and I think including Chad Underwood, it says in that report that there was no jamming and there was no signs.
Jamming is something that could be classified, and so it could be an unclassified version. My point overall here is that I don't know if there was jamming or not. But if there was
classified, why are they talking about it now? Why is Alex Dietrich talking about it?
Obviously,
I don't know. It's not classified.
I don't know. I actually
talked
don't know.
about it in his.
Well,
my point, though, Mick, is that if there was
article.
jamming, that sort of is not good evidence for your theory of the.
Yeah, but, you're basically just repeating Alpachek's argument here. And
Look,
he's
I'm doing
basing
my
it
own
on
analysis here. This is not. I'm looking at other people, but I'm coming to my own conclusions here.
Right, but yeah, do you know how the handoff works from the radar to the ATFLIR system?
I don't know the
you know
nuance.
that actually
The only
happened?
thing that I do know is that if it is getting handed off, it's more likely to be a friendly thing than an adversary.
Sure, like if it was handed off and they knew what it was, then yes. But what if it wasn't handed off? What if it was just like a bore site acquisition? Like, so it's looking straight ahead, which it pretty much is. It's like 6 degrees off to the left. He could have acquired it in the wild field of view. You see the little black dot. He zooms in on that. Underwood's done an interview. I don't think it's actually fully been released yet, but maybe he'll say more about that. Yeah. But the thing is, his story has changed. If you go back to this report. The executive report, which was done by ATIP, by actually interviewing people, there's things in there that are just completely wrong. Like he says that he thought that the object was co-altitude or about up to 5,000 feet below him, whereas in the video it clearly shows that it's above him. That it's like I can't remember what it is, like 5 degrees up or something, like 5-6 degrees up. So there's these big discrepancies between what was reported back then and what is being recalled now 17 years later. And so it's very difficult to say this is actual data. And if you're talking about, Dietrich says there was jamming, but Dietrich doesn't agree with Fravor on the length of the encounter.
Right. And there's time dilation.
Huge discrepancies.
So I guess the overall point that I want to make here is just that we obviously need more data to know for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
We're in the realm of talking about eyewitnesses, and so I don't but I just want to move on through some of these other points here because I'm just sort of laying out different pieces of evidence that could be disconfirming to your hypothesis. That's all. So let me just.
You were going to disprove it.
Well, I'm not saying I'm disproving it. I'm just saying.
You said you were going to disprove it.
No, I said I'm going to attempt to sort of provide some evidence that is. Puts it lower down in the rank of analysis.
Why we can't rewind the tape? This isn't ESPN, Mick.
Nick, let me keep on going here. Come on.
We can go back and view it, though. We can certainly.
Yeah.
So there was the To the Stars Academy released a report. They said that in this report that they released back in when the article came out in New York Times.
That's the report I was referring to.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of reports, but yeah, there's this report that they say they were basically in the U.S. Navy operating area, approximately 80 nautical miles. That's about 150 kilometers. I drew a 150 kilometer circle around here just to get a sense of somewhere in here, and then I looked on and found this as a map. I couldn't find a really canonical source for this. I found it through a link on an article by Tyler Rogaway. I've seen stuff like this that he's posted before. But what I think this is essentially things that are kind of restricted sea space and restricted airspace. I think this white is the restricted airspace because you can see planes would be flying in through here, right? So I guess my overall point here is that they're in an area that's in a training area, right? So anything that's in the air that shouldn't be there, it shouldn't be there, right? So if you're talking about a random jet or a friendly jet, it shouldn't be there. just full stop. So
Well, where was it though? I mean, it could be on the edge of that area.
Well, we don't
it
know.
could be that area wasn't an active area. It's not like this white area covers pretty much the entirety of the coast. I think I've actually flown in part of those areas myself.
Well, there's a little thing around the coast, and there's also little things here. So
how do people get to John Wayne Airport?
There's a little area here. Like I said, like this is just something for people to look up for restricted airspace. But my point here, Mick, is that it's likely that these things that were happening were in these restricted airspaces.
Yeah, I think probably most likely what we're looking
fair.
at is another fighter jet rather than another commercial thing. I wouldn't rule out the commercial things. I put fighter jets number 1, commercial jets number 2.
So in all the additional classified annex, you've said a number of times that the classified annex is the exact same because it comes to the same conclusions. There may be additional data with
the classified annex has a lot of additional data in it, but the conclusion of the classified version of the report, the ODNI has said is the same.
Right. However, I would argue that once you have access to that additional data, you may look at some of these different issues and look what you may have thought was prosaic, given all the additional metadata and context that you may have changed your mind on it. That's
How would you know? You don't know what the data is.
Well, look, I think overall we need to be not just trying to debunk things, but asking for more data.
Well,
I think that's what scientists do is ask for more data.
I would want more data, but you just said that the data would push you in a certain way. It might actually reinforce the conclusions of the public report.
What I'm saying is that there's potentially good, interesting information in that classified annex for people.
I agree. I'd love to see it.
Right.
And I'd love to.
But my larger point here is just that it's likely that whatever all these things are happening are in these restricted airspaces, right? I don't know if you accept that or not.
Well,
but I think it's likely.
The jets are flying in restricted airspace, yeah. So I'm not sure what your point is there.
My point is that if there's some sort of other jet that is unidentified, that they were mistaking as a rotating glare exotic object, that there's something that went horribly wrong.
I think the most likely is that it's one of their jets, and they just similarly with the Chilean case. You remember that when you brought it up earlier?
Yeah.
That was a plane that was on the radar, and they called the airport and said, "Is there a plane on the radar?" And the airport says no, because they asked them about an area south of the airport when the plane was actually north of the airport. So it's only good if you know what you're looking at, and because the AppFLIR system is just a visual thing. You might be looking at something that's not the same thing as where you think it is on the radar. And I think that's probably what happened.
Okay, my larger point here, though, Mick, is that in looking at all the different pieces of evidence, going back to what Ryan Graves says, the sensor, radar, data link, PID, IFF, the airplane schedule, and the geographic location data, that's all the stuff that I just showed here. All the radar data, all the additional information, the IFF, the PIDS, the jamming, as well as geographic context, that there's certain aspects of you only looking at the video in the absence of the broader context, and you're drawing conclusions in the absence of the larger context, which is essentially single source reporting, which is what Lou Elizondo told you is basically a no-no in the intelligence analysis area.
Well, I only have the video, and we don't know if there is a firm link between all that data that you said and the object that is seen in the video. In fact, my hypothesis is that it probably isn't, because AlphaCheck made a fairly compelling case that if it was something that was on the SA, then it would have been identified and they would have known what they were looking at.
Correct.
So I think what they're looking at, they didn't realize was one of the things that was on the SA, because they weren't sure exactly how far away it was and what angle the camera was pointing in relative to the SA page. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of other data, and it would be great to have that. But based on what I can see, that's my hypothesis. And really, that isn't the primary thing that I've said about the video. The most important thing I've said is debunking the claims that people make that it's moving very fast and shows amazing technology.
This you're sort of just taking a bit of a, like you're recontextualizing what the problem is. The problem is that there's all sorts of additional context here that you're trying to eliminate the context. And what I'm saying here is that you're eliminating the context.
No,
that's bad.
I'm addressing all those things, and I've talked about it on Twitter with AlphaCheck, and I'd be happy to talk about it some more. And he actually said I raised some good issues, and he had to go back and check a bunch of things, and so he went back and beefed up his argument a bit more, and then we kind of got into a little bit of an argument on Twitter, and now he doesn't seem to want to talk to me. But I agree. There's more data, but I think there isn't a firm link between all that data and what's on the video.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to wrap this up here as we go through these other ones here. So again, I'll go back to your statement that what we're looking at is the tail end of a jet. I think that's, again, like you said, you're compressed on TV, but when you make statements like that, I think it's irresponsible. because I think you can't actually say
yeah.
that.
I don't know about
I
irresponsible.
think you're
What does it
drawing a
do? Does
conclusion.
does it a national disaster because I've said
I think
is instead of probably is?
Yeah, I think you're drawing. I think the lack, your sort of sloppiness in the language you use is bad. Like you should be a little bit more like, hey,
Why
you
should
don't
I
know
be?
if it is, because you're basically saying this is a high confidence thing, that this is basically nothing there to
Walter
it.
Cronkite. I'm just some guy who's putting forward a bunch of hypotheses about what's in
No.
there and pointing out things that are wrong. And occasionally I phrase it in a more definitive way than people would like.
Right. And I think maybe like part of it is when you're introduced, on national television, you're introduced as an expert, right? And so I think that's where I think that's all. I mean, that's all I would say.
Well, I'm
It's
giving you
sloppy.
my expert opinion.
It's
but
sloppy.
I think it is
like,
that.
You should like it, but I think it reflects maybe what you actually think, that it is just the end of the tale with the jet plane that's solved. And it's
Well,
resolved.
I do think that. I think that's
Right.
by far the most likely explanation.
Right, but you're not being a good,
I
intelligent
agree
human.
that it isn't definitive, and some
You're being
people.
you're being a
I think
bad skeptic. You're being,
Let Mick finish. Let Mick finish his point, please.
Sorry.
Well, no, that's pretty much my point. That I think that I'm putting forward my best hypothesis, and I should have use better language if I wanted to be clear. But again, this was a super high intensity thing. They've been like calling me all through the day, getting me on this thing, and then I'm there with Cuomo. I can't see anything on screen. I can't actually see the video that they're showing on the screen, as I'm just talking to the camera and like trying to rattle through my points. And yeah, if I had a bit more relaxed situation where I was just chatting with him, I could have said, I think that's the most likely explanation. And this is what came out.
I guess my larger point, though, is that people look to you, like people like Michael Shermer. I've heard him talk about, Mick West's analysis are pretty much conclusive, right? So when you use language that it is conclusive when it actually isn't, you're sort of putting forth bad information that's sort of rippling out, and it's not being a good skeptic, which is all about sort of suspending judgment.
Well, I think
like a little bit
the person
more.
who's not being a good skeptic there is more Shermer than me, because he's kind of just taking my words as gospel and pointing at them, and
Right.
He's perhaps
It's not
repeating
good.
them uncritically. But but who's going to believe Michael Shermer in the UFO community? He's a guy who doesn't believe in the ET hypothesis, or probably to the same extent as me, but is a bit more blunt about saying so. Most of the time I explain quite carefully that I have this ranking system, and I always keep the ET hypothesis on there. But when pressured or when space is limited, I do agree. I sometimes make statements that are a bit more definitive than they should be, and this is probably something I should try to improve on the future, because it leads to conversations like this where people are just basically arguing over the way I phrase things.
Right, but the phrasing actually carries a lot of meaning. It's the difference between
I know,
high
but what's
confidence
really
and low
important
confidence.
here is what these objects are, not really what I say about them.
Well, okay. Well, let me just. We're coming to the end. I think what I've laid out here is the basic of my arguments. A lot of these other things are kind of recasts, and so I'm just going to go through quickly here some of these other points. So the Corbell drops again. You're saying that it's the worst ever. That you're saying Jeremy does not have corroborating data. Now, again, you're saying stuff that's basically like, how do you know?
Right. What I'm saying there specifically is that this data does not corroborate the video data and the descending sphere data. He has three separate things, and they're not linked by time stamps or by location stamps to being the exact same event. Corroborating data is when you've got one object and you have data on that one object from multiple sensors or multiple angles. Like here, we've got one shot of a bunch of what look like navigation lights in the sky. Then we've also got an IR thing of a sphere descending, and then we've got a radar data with a whole bunch of things. That is not corroborating, because we can't identify any one object in all three things.
Well, because the data that we're getting from Corbell does not have like good provenance, I think you're right in the sense that we can't put a certain amount of evidence. But I think also at the same time it could be corroborating. So for you to eliminate, I think you're again going too far for what you know.
How could it be corroborating? Can you identify which object is which, and in all three videos?
I don't. I haven't seen the data, and you haven't either. So I'm not going to say
I've
whether
seen
you
what
can
he's
or not.
put
But
out.
here
I've
you
seen
are.
all three videos. By not have corroborating data, I'm referring to this. He said this is corroborating data. He said this video is corroborating data. I'm saying this is not corroborating data.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So there's the radar data, this data, and then again, I'm going back to this, which is that I don't know exactly where they're at, but it's entirely possible that these what seem to be just mundane drones or planes, they could actually be in restricted airspace, which actually
They're
changes
actually
the
in the blue area that you pointed out earlier, which is the approach path for Southern California. I showed that in my video.
Oh, you did? Okay.
The Omaha specifically is directly, you can look at the direction on the deck log, the latitude and longitude is directly under the flight path of about maybe 10 planes that go almost directly overhead at around that time.
Okay, I missed that. So that's, I don't know if there's GPS coordinated versions of these maps, but that would be good to have, just to, have people, as we're getting these GPS coordinates and stuff, just to be able to sort of see like what the larger context again. Again, I'm going back to the context because it's really important as to where they're at here, as to whether or not they could be sort of explained away as just drones. Because even if they're drones, they shouldn't be there if it's restricted airspace.
Sure, yeah, that would be pretty significant.
Again.
Just pop in real quick. We probably should make this our closing arguments, and then we'll get I guess to the end of this.
Yep, I'll do a couple here. Here again, it's just a thing where you say new footage. It's just bokeh, not a pyramid. Again,
I'll stand by that one. I think
that's fine. But I think
bokeh.
Again, you're declaring something that there may be additional data and context that we don't know. So again, I think it may
put money on that one.
Okay, fair enough. The go fast not being go. Okay, this is probably I don't have time to get into the last thing here of the preliminary analysis. There's a tweet thread that I did with you that was sort of going back and forth, and like I said, people can look up the slides and there's a whole annex. But this go fast, let's make this the last one. Okay, so Mick West. So you said on the Unidentified Celebrity Review on June 21st, you said this isn't my opinion. This is me saying This isn't me saying I'm an expert. The go fast video is going slow, and you should trust everyone else. It's saying this is the math. These are the numbers on the screen. These are the angles. You can do it yourself, or you can find a high schooler to verify it. So what you're saying is that anybody can just look at the numbers and figure out the trigonometry, and that what they'll find is that it's not going fast, it's not mundane, it's nothing special, right?
Assuming the numbers are correct, and some people have raised the issue that they might not be correct, but they haven't really given very good evidence for why they wouldn't be correct, and they seem pretty consistent throughout the video to me.
So the last question that I'll ask you here is, do you remember what Lou Elizondo told you about this when you asked him?
Nope.
Okay. What he said was that they actually had radar on this, and that they were able to discern that it was an object that was indeed moving at a very fast speed. That goes above and beyond what you had with just the video. So there's actually radar returns. And also he says...
Wait, no, you just said there is a radar returns.
Yeah.
Lou said there are radar returns. It doesn't mean that there are.
He says, let's see. Let me see what exactly...
I'm saying he might be wrong. He may be misremembering or mischaracterizing the situation.
Okay, well, first, I'm just going to trust that he was right and not just say that he was wrong, because that's a weak argument.
Okay.
Just to say, oh, he was wrong. That's just like that's a cop-out.
But isn't automatically trusting it also a weak position?
I think it's just like Mick kind of takes a position of anything that disagrees with his like core hypothesis, just like, oh, well, let's just discount it. Let's just like say
secrets
like,
data.
That seems like what you're doing
appeal
too.
To secrets, and that's what Lou is doing. But he's not producing any evidence. So we just got to go by Lou's word. And frankly, I think that he mischaracterizes things a lot of the time.
But I'm not, for me personally, I'm not making a decision on this. You are on the record saying that this is just math, that you could just do the trigonometry and you'll be able to discover. What I'm saying again and again and again, Mick, is that in this situation, there's additional context that you don't have access to. It's secret data that other people have looked at. And what he's saying in it, he says again and again, according to the radar data, not just what you see in the camera, that the performance characteristics on this object of the go fast, and also pointing out that there was some very compelling long pause signatures associated with that video. I don't know if that means there was active jamming or anything else, but he's basically saying, look, we have additional data that's not like open, or we're making this decision on the go fast. And so for you to only look at the go fast video and do all this trigonometry, I think it's like it goes above.
But that's what he did with like the video when he showed it on the Unidentified show. They were showing it on screen, and they had two experts come in and go, look at that thing, it's moving really fast. And they talk about moving 2/3 the speed of sound. And they didn't say anything about secret data backing that up. They just said, that's what you see on the video. So I'm claiming the video does not actually show that. Maybe there's some extra information, like Louis claiming there's extra information, but if you can't bring it, then it doesn't really mean that much.
Nick, let me just finish this last point, because Nick, you said yourself when you were on national TV, you said something that was maybe something that you shouldn't have, that this is something that you didn't know for sure. I think the conceits of something like To the Stars Academy, the Unidentified TV show, is not a good standard to base upon what the standard of evidence are when we look at something like there's intelligence analysis and other things that are going on.
So you have the same criticism of Lou Elizondo then for saying this on national TV.
It's the criticism of the conceit of what they were trying to do to raise awareness, and they had to use the affordances
right.
of,
So they're trying to raise
TV.
awareness, so they're allowed to make stuff up on TV, but I'm not allowed to be a bit too definitive.
Well, you are seen as somebody who's like a UFO expert and authority. So what you
far
say,
less than Lou Elizondo is. I think he's probably seen as 10 times the authority I am.
When I listen to Lou Elizondo, he is extremely careful in how he phrases things. And I think because you don't have a training in science, and so there's a certain way in that this may be new to you for how scientists speak about these things. But scientists actually are very humble in terms of what they know and they don't know. And there's certain lack of epistemic humility, meaning you say things above and beyond what you have knowledge of. And that's like, that goes up, that's bad. It just, it's sort of
I'm epistemically humble in, if you take a long conversation with me, like I said, I say things on national TV and in Twitter sometimes that are a bit too definitive. I would agree with you with that, but I don't think it's that big of a deal, really.
All right, okay, real quick, I just want to say, just a compliment to this conversation. The New York Post just said they're watching the show, and they said this is what the next 3 hours special on Discovery Channel should be. And I couldn't agree with it more. Like, this is how conversations happen. And I guess we'll end with this. Kent, that was amazing.
Thanks.
I love that you brought all of these slides. Mick, thank you for your patience and your ability to take this information and criticism and even agree with it. I mean, I think, Kent, you're underlying, from what I gather here in the last hour, it's the messaging sometimes on a national platform that comes out. Well, and it's
what I'd say, the thing that I see again and again that Mick does is he tries to reduce things down to a component part while ignoring the larger context. And he's basing judgments upon like there's something called mereology, which is like the whole part structure. And so he's taking something that's a reductive part and then drawing a broader conclusion when he can't actually do that because he doesn't have full access to the data. And he's making.
But there are actually reductive parts in this argument. When people make specific arguments about the video, that is a part that can be taken in isolation, and you don't have to draw wider conclusions from it. But you can analyze that particular part and say, that glow is just an artifact of the camera, or the rotation is just an artifact of the camera. It's not going fast. These are reductive parts that are fine to look at in themselves. I think your problem is more with my broader conclusions that you think I need to.
You have shown yourself, as I've demonstrated here, that you make statements that you can't back up, that you're drawing knowledge that you can't say, that this is definitely, you said on national TV.
I'd be happy to back up any of the statements that I have made and or retract any statements as I have done already, like when they've been too declarative.
And that's fair. He has done that. To be fair to Mick, he has done that. Like, he has. And he has taken your criticism today and said, you know what, Kent, you're right. Maybe I was too definitive on certain tweets or certain things that I said on CNN. And to be fair to Nick, to defend him a little bit on a CNN hit, that's sometimes nerve-wracking. It's super, super fast, and I can understand getting nervous in an instant like that, especially if you can't see the other anchor or you can't see any footage that they're popping up. Like, you're kind of trusting a network news to represent you in the right way and vice versa. And so I can understand how maybe he stumbled upon his words, maybe didn't word things the right way. And like he said himself, it's something he's got to work on. It's something he's going to work on. He's going to work on it. And look, here's the thing, Kent. I think, and I think you think, and I'm not going to speak for Michael, but I think in 2 or 3 years, when there's more data, I mean, Mick has said himself, the thing that would convince him is if, let's say we had 2 camera angles of that Tic Tac video, he's going to have a much more difficult time, putting these hypotheses in his Occam razor's list. I think you're going to start seeing maybe that, I don't know, I don't want to call it alien because nobody's doing that, but this phenomenon, this unhuman, unknown box maybe moves up his list a little more. And he said that, and so that's why I like to bring Mick on, because he, in 150 tweets or limited tweet or 260, whatever it is, context gets lost. Meaning gets lost. And sometimes you write something and you think it sounds funny in your head, but everybody takes it as an insult. And I know Mick. This guy is a cheeky, dry sense of humor. I mean,
I've
he's
deleted a few tweets.
he's deleted tweets. He's walked back on stuff. And look, if it's something that he's admit and it's something that he's trying to work on, I say that's a win on you, Kent. I think, you got him to say that. And I feel like he said it in other platforms. But again, like every time, Mick, you come here and we have a conversation, I feel like I'm more and more blown away by just you're a cool dude, and you're just trying to get the answers, and you're basing your hypotheses off of what's there, what's on the table, and not what's not on the table, not what people are saying. And I agree, he kind of, sometimes I think you're skipping the totality of what's happening here. There's a really big picture, and because you don't have the data points for the bigger picture, you're just going off of the data points you have. You're kind of throwing that out of the way, and I understand why you're doing that. But again, I think this is a healthy conversation. I would love to maybe do a part 2 of this if you guys are up for it. We could plan that in the next few weeks or so. Mick, please put a list together. Put.
I was gonna say, if we're doing this again, Mick gets slides, and he gets to come prepared.
Give me something to respond to.
Well, yeah, and I just wanted to say quickly, real quick, Ken. I just wanted to say one thing again, and I wanted to appreciate both of you for coming on here and doing this. I know it's a challenging thing to do, and it takes guts. And we're in front of a decent amount of people, and a lot more people are going to watch this later. But I did want to say, I definitely think, Mick, one of the things that is the biggest challenge from people who read your tweets is that they really feel like, and I think Kent did a good job of just pointing out this one particular point, is that you can be very definitive, and sometimes you separate your own opinion from your debunking. And I think that's where people are just like, so far, they throw their hands up. They go, "How can he be a debunker and simultaneously have an opinion as a human being?" And that's where I think that's where some of the problems come.
It's an issue. I just sometimes you can't have the space for putting in the I think or almost certainly.
And let's be honest, sometimes you just can't help yourself.
I think that's it. I think he's trolling.
I want to just point out.
Sometimes you can't help yourself.
I want to just send a kudos and thank you to Mick, because a lot of the stuff that I was showing was because of the stuff that you were putting out that other people were responding to. So there's a sort of a dialectic process of believing truths and avoiding falsehoods. Mm-hmm. So there's a healthy function of those two. And then when it's healthy is when you have open-minded collaboration between those two. When it's toxic is when you have closed-mindedness, where it's sort of like not listening. And then so some of my Twitter interactions where I've tried to engage with this, there's a point where it's just sort of like the door is shut and you can't get through, because it's sort of like, there's a larger point that's there because there's these dogmatic statements. But overall, I wouldn't have done this presentation had I not been so pissed off and angry about things that I thought you were wrong about, right? So that sort of catalyzed my own process to be able to go through and just basically document out, okay, here's what I think Mick is doing. And I tried to do the best I could to represent what your arguments were, the best as I could, and the best that I understood. And then how I think that they start to break down. And hopefully, there's all these slides are on SlideShare under my name, Kent Bai, and I'll tweet it out as well. So people can there's a whole appendix of lots of other things from, additional things from the Standard Encyclopedia of Philosophy and the Ethical Skeptic and some other sort of resources. Because I think as a community, we need to have this sort of we need this healthy dialectic between more people who are kind of providing these provocations like Mick has done so well, that has really catalyzed the generation of other people responding. That's actually revealed quite a lot of knowledge about this case. So I think there's been a real function, but I think I'd caution around that sort of lack of epistemic humility, going too far about what you actually know, and sort of being a bad skeptic in the sense of, being willing to suspend your judgment of not, there's 3 doxastic beliefs of belief, disbelief, and then there's I don't know, I'm just going to suspend making a decision. And I think sometimes by making a decision, it sort of creates these, ways in which that people have these Twitter wars and battles. So I would just sort of encourage more open-mindedness and more collaboration for people who actually, are really challenging, hey, but what about this? What about this? And the people who have the will to believe being no, but I really think it's this. And I think it's between those two together, working together, where the real knowledge is being produced.
Sure. Well, I'm always happy to have conversations with people and listen to their ideas and have my ideas challenged and defend my own ideas if that's what's needed. And I apologize to people if I come across for seem too definitive sometimes, and I keep the AT hypothesis on the table. I keep the advanced technology hypothesis on the table. I keep all kinds of hypotheses on the table, and I probably have biases, but I think that's kind of born from my long experience of investigating lots of cases and they're not turning out to be anything interesting. But I'd love to have more data. Like it would be good to have two angles, but right now we've got one angle and we've got some stuff that's hinted about. And that really isn't enough to make conclusions other than what we can conclude with the visible data. So bring on more data, and I shall try to be more equivocable, or whatever, when I say things. I will equivocate.
Equitable.
More.
Yeah.
I love you, Mick West. I'm not gonna lie. I want to just share. We did put a poll. I put a poll up in the chat. Says who's winning so far, Mick or Kent? And then I wrote Team Kent or Team Mick. It was pretty damn close. It was 55% in favor of Kent by. So, man, this was almost straight down the middle. There was 186 votes. Don't look so sad, Mick. Don't look so sad.
It's fine. No, it's
okay.
good. I mean, it's
okay. Maybe you'll win the next one.
That's great, because this is a pro-UFO crowd, really.
Right, exactly. I mean, look, man, that's why I'm trying to bring a little bit of levity, a little bit of clearer thinking, a little bit more questioning your own belief systems with this show. That's the whole point of it. So this discussion, I think, did a lot for that. So Kent, Mick, thank you so much. Real quick before you go, Kent, is there anything that maybe changed your thought process on Mick West? Do you like Mick West a little more after this conversation? Are you a little less pissed off?
I got to give it to Mick for sort of taking my points and really hearing me. Like I said, I've sort of tried to communicate some of these things on Twitter, and it's not the best medium to have these nuanced type of conversations. And so I'm glad that, and there's a lot of points that I was making that I actually don't have the data to be able to, for sure on my side, to say, no, for sure I know either, because I don't know either. It's just more of a preponderance of all these things. And the larger point is like just the larger contextual information. That's why I was asking Mick around, do you remember what Lou told you about this specific thing? Because that's basically like, I wanted to really understand whether or not Mick was really internalizing some of the ways in which that, sometimes I hear Mick say, well, Lou didn't respond to this, but actually if you go back and listen, I think Lou actually is responding by saying, look, we have more context that you don't have. And we came to a different
That's his default answer. He just says it about everything.
Well, but that may actually be true, though.
Well, let's not get into this again.
But anyway,
Jesus Christ.
One thing real quick. I see a lot of people in the chat asking for an exit poll, and I think some people may have changed their position.
Okay, we'll get an exit poll. I'll get an exit poll the second hour, Mick West. We'll do this scientifically. Is there any good points maybe that you thought that Kent brought up, Mick, before you get out of here?
Well, no, I mean, like what I've already said, really, is that it's true. I'm too definitive sometimes, and it's not good communication. He says it's sloppy, but I don't. Like I said, I'm not Walter Cronkite. I'm not like holding the nation's attention in the palm of my hand. I've got like a few thousand followers on Twitter.
Right, and you also you don't have your own nationwide television show on a cable network.
Just to push back on that a little bit, you are being on CNN, you are on New York Times.
You're a voice.
Cited as an expert.
Yeah, and I get misquoted.
You're not just your level of authority. You're in the New York Times. I mean, you're in some of the biggest newspapers, and I think what I'm saying is that there's a certain responsibility there when you get to that level to actually go with what the data are actually saying, because what you're saying sometimes is going above and beyond what the data are saying.
Well, if someone disagrees with what I've said, just ask me and I will clarify or back it up.
Excellent. All right, gentlemen. Well, seriously, this was awesome. I cannot tell you how many people in the chat were enjoying this and interacting the entire hour in 20 minutes. So we got Steven Greenstreet on standby, also with UFO Jane and Rathers. I'm sure got some hot takes on this conversation. Probably, maybe we'll get him to do the exit poll. All right, you guys. We'll see you next time. I appreciate you stopping by. Real quick, where can people find your stuff, Kent?
Oh, I'm on Twitter at KentBuy. I have like one UAP video on YouTube. And I have a podcast on VR. I look at a lot of emerging technologies, and I'm an oral historian. I'm coming up on like episode 1,000.
Nice, congratulations. We got to get you on the Singularity Lab, because I think that's a good platform for you.
I've already booked him.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. All right, Ken. Well, we'll see you soon, my friend. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Ken.
Mick West. Thank you, man. Thank you for always saying yes to this show. You're truly... I'm sure you got
always have a good time.
ton of other better shit to do, but I'm glad we always get you smiling. I'm glad that we didn't get too much resting Mick face today, and it was a good time, man. Oh, there it is. There's the resting Mick face. There it is. All right, Mick West, dude. I really appreciate it. Friend of the show. We'll see you soon.
Wait, Mick.
Please, tell everybody Metabunk, Mick West.
Mick West.
Google it.
It'll show up everywhere.
All right, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
See ya.
Ciao. Woo! Okay, we can't waste any time.
No, we gotta move. We got
UFO Jane's
amazing
got
people
a heart
behind.
out, and Steve. I mean, we've actually kept Steven Greenstreet in a back room for the last 10 minutes. I feel like nobody does that to Greenstreet. He's got a hot take. Let's do it. Okay, so please let's introduce the next folks, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I couldn't stand it. We had Greenstreet and we have got UFO Jane in the background. And I just can't stand the fact that we were leaving him back there. So for those of you who don't know, Steven Greenstreet is the extraordinary journalist from the New York Post, specifically creating, a journalist who's creating extraordinary content, bringing you the facts, bringing you the truth consistently. I've come to call him a friend. Thank you so much for joining us today, Steven Greenstreet.
Hell yeah. I'm happy to be back. This is awesome.
Excellent.
Great to have you. And the one and only UFO Jane. If you are somebody who loves the weird and fringe, make sure you go to the YouTube channel, That Weird UFO Show, the creator being UFO Jane. Welcome UFO Jane.
Man, that was intense. I'm tired from just watching that.
I was tense the whole time.
Yeah. I can tell you, though, that was the least amount of work I've done in an hour on this show. Like, all I had to do was sit back and listen. I mean, that was awesome. And I saw that somebody in the New York Post was watching. I'm wondering if anybody in this chat here might have. Okay, cool. All right. I was maybe wondering, oh, really? Is the high-ups at the New York Post checking us out, huh? No, it was Steven Greenstreet.
I forgot to switch accounts. I'll probably get chewed out, but I've been chewed out before. It's fine.
Well, we're gonna say the New York Post supports this show, so that'll be the headline coming out.
That's fine.
It's fine. I'll back you up.
All right, so Steven, everyone on Twitter is like, what's happening with Greenstreet? What is going on with Greenstreet? Has he lost his shit? And I just want to say, because I always try to put myself in the shoes of other people and look at it from their perspective. So can I take a crack at why I think you might be so upset?
Go.
All right. So I think what's happening here is that you're a journalist. You're a filmmaker. You've got, you're trying to do the best, trying to set the highest bar you can, right, on this topic. Because I think in your mind and in a lot of people's minds, this topic deserves the highest bar you could possibly set it at. Because it's a weird topic. It's a weird thing to talk about. And in a way, you, as this person, you're putting your professionalism, your neck out on the line, your name. Like all of your friends, your family know you're the guy in the New York Post who's got the UFO show. And so when you see something that doesn't meet that caliber high bar that you've set, it upsets you and you take it personally because it's like, fuck, man, like I'm trying to sit here. I'm having phone calls with people at the Pentagon. I'm trying to confirm things here and there, and you're doing all of this wonderful work. And then comes along this TMZ special and then this Discovery Channel special and I can understand just because I'm in production too, how you're like, oh my God, this is so overproduced, the music, but am I close? Am I sort of in the right ballpark here?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. You're insightful. You're quite insightful. I would say, like, for the longest time, I was quiet and didn't offer my opinion on, like, the cultural side of this stuff. I was more nuts and bolts of, like, heading on statements, data, facts, all that kind of stuff. If you watch The Basement Office, it's very focused on, like, facts, evidence, dates, times, and that's kind of like me. So I wasn't commenting on like the cultural, social part of this until it started becoming the conversation. Right. I think we've lost the nuts and bolts stuff, and it's like what's kind of risen to the top is like just the fun social circus kind of stuff. And I felt like, all right, well, no, I have to say something because I'm not feeling comfortable with something that's unknown.
Right.
You know, like I'm not comfortable until it's known. And so if everyone starts feeling comfortable and patting themselves on the back of like, yeah, that's it. That's what's going on. Hell yeah. It's like, we got to think differently. And, when I ask critical questions, but the questions aren't complex. So for example, I started asking recently just random people who were putting their stake in the ground and saying, this is, I'd say, what is it? And then they would like react and like, what do you mean? What is it? It is what it is. What is it? What evidence? When you ask like simple pointed questions and the reaction is one of like vitriol or frustration, then you know something's there. You know something's going on.
Right.
The opposite of what we just, more or less the opposite of what we just saw. So what we just saw with Kent and Mick was like where this conversation should be. Like that kind of stuff should be at the top. And
right.
Anyway, I got frustrated at just the whole the mutiny almost. I interpret the mutiny of the conversation recently by folks who are just like socially I don't know. I called it a circus online. It's come across as just this like circus, and I feel like dropping a Molotov into it and being like, no, it's not. you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
hold on.
Yeah.
I have to just say that like I've changed my mind the last 24 hours, and I actually do believe it all. I actually honestly do believe it all. And this message is brought to you by Tic Tac.
You sneaky son of a gun.
I was like,
no, I love it. I'm like, where's he going with this?
10 seconds. I get paid $10 if I show this for 10 seconds.
Please do. I mean, show for 20 seconds if you want.
I've got, if you
I'm
can
just
see
kidding.
back here, I don't know if you
Yeah.
can see my back up here, right there. That's actually 4 boxes of Kit Kats right there.
No, not Kit Kats.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
But do you know how frustrating it is to see unsubstantiated claims go unchallenged by national media? To
Right.
just sit back and on national TV or in big press organizations to listen to someone go, the U.S. government has flying saucers, and the interviewer goes, oh wow, tell me more, and it's like, wait, no, this is the part where you're supposed to like stick your
Right.
face in there as
Question
a
it.
journalist and go, yeah, and like question it. And if in the end, after the questioning and after the digging and criticism, if in the end that person's statement still stands, wow, it speaks for itself, you know. But just to sit back and just let people talk on national TV in front of millions of people, some of which are just hearing this for the first time, like virgin UFO brains, you know, and these people need to be hearing the truth,
Nuance.
the facts, and their introduction to it shouldn't be at this point this escapism entertainment. We're not in a tent here. This isn't like Barnum and Bailey's circus, and so it's frustrating. And I just feel like there needs to be a different way of thinking about it. And you know, like the reins on this horse are on the ground. The horse is going. You know, when it comes to the cultural, UFOs, entertainment, news, media, all of that, put it together, that horse, the reins have been, it's going. It's on the run at this point. And I just felt like, hey, maybe we should like pick at least one of those up and pull back a little bit and be like, okay, welcome to the party, everyone. Now let's get serious. Let's get serious here.
Rather, you popped in. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to push back on that just a little. You know, I do agree with you that it was mostly people talking and kind of agreeing with each other, but there was some critical analysis. There was this Dr. Hakeem Olusi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but, you know, they brought him in and they did talk to him, and, you know, he gave his opinion, and he said, you know, he mentioned even like the rotating gimbal argument, Mick West's argument about the gimbal, and his argument was that, if you take the things at face value, yes, these things are amazing. But he did caveat that in that these things are hard to take at face value. So they did show a little bit of that. Maybe not as much as you'd like, but they did show some.
Yeah, and I even brought this up on Twitter that a detail that I've been paying attention to lately is that the Pentagon's official statements on this are so underreported, and not many people have paid attention to what the Pentagon has actually said. And I was actually really impressed, super impressed that TMZ, they only brought it up for 20 seconds. Yeah. 20 seconds. But they brought it up, and 60 Minutes didn't, for example. Right. TMZ, right. So in my opinion, TMZ did more journalism than 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed by that, that they actually were like, okay, they say this. How do you respond? I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome.
Well, here's the thing, right? Is we had that Twitter space the night it came out, and you were so hot. You even said I could only get through half of it, and I shut it off. And based off of your description, I was like, fuck, man, I don't know if I'm going to watch this. I don't know if I'm going to watch this. But then I forced myself to sit down and watch it. And we review the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch show every week on this show. And I'll tell you right now, I'm very, very critical of that show. I'm a production guy. I make films. I edit. I'm right there in the same sort of wheelhouse as you, except I don't have the journalism credibility that goes along with it. But I sat and I watched that, and I said to myself, yeah, the music's a little overdone. It's a little overproduced, but it's TMZ, and I'll be honest with you, they weren't saying facts that were wrong. I think if you were brand spanking new to this topic, I think TMZ did a very good, and like you said, and took more time. They took an hour out of their programming to do this whole thing, and I thought it was done pretty tastefully for TMZ, and I thought that the facts that were in there, I thought were really great facts. They didn't, and then when they got to Corbell's footage of the new stuff it was not even, they just brushed by that. It wasn't a big part of the presentation, and I thought it was a pretty good introduction if you didn't know what was going on, and then that got me to thinking, well, we're not going to have control over this. This is a story that we don't get to decide who covers it. And we're going to have to,
really
we're going to have to be okay with that. No, do we get to decide whether or not TMZ gets to cover it? Do we get to decide, if I think 60 Minutes should do a fucking hour on this, that's my opinion. But I don't think we'll ever get it. I don't know. Am I off there? What do you think?
I disagree with the idea of surrendering control of what's covered,
Right. I don't mean surrendering. I'm saying surrendering control to who covers it, not what's covered.
Oh, sure.
I think we should always demand hey, TMZ, next time can you spend 20 minutes on the fact that the Pentagon's gone back and forth? I think we should always demand better from them, but I don't think we're gonna get to decide who,
You can what this though. So Jeremy was part of Big Phone Home, right? He was all over TMZ. Everybody's talked to Luis. So I agree with you. I'm of the theory that disclosure has been a plan by different parties for a long period of time, and that this time range was probably looked at for a long period of time, and just kind of the right folks popped up, that made sense to tell the story. And I think we've all been talking to each other throughout these years and influencing each other. So I think we may not be able to control who tells the story and who even listens to TMZ versus listens to this YouTube channel. But yeah, I don't think that we should relinquish controls. And for all we know, Luis, you could be on the next TMZ special. I totally could see that. I think that could organically happen, right. Even though there's some control behind the scenes.
Right. The only time I will be on TMZ ever is if they track me down after buying a latte and they're like, "Why are you so mad?" Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys? I mean, what are your thoughts, Luis? Like on and you, Steven? I mean, who's responsible in 60 Minutes? Is it the producers? Is it the investigative journalists? Because a lot of these folks have never picked up, and now we have people on NBC now, like Gadi Schwartz, who are now starting to follow along in this story. But a lot of these folks have never even covered this story before. How are they supposed to get their shit together so fast? Or what is your expectation of them?
Well, I mean, let me just say that the 60 Minutes thing was good. I liked the 60 Minutes thing, but within there were there was at least one glaring factual error to me, and it's just indicative of it's not isolated to 60 Minutes. It's like across media. They said, yes, 60 Minutes said they showed the leaks that Jeremy has released, the quick shots of those, and they said the Pentagon has confirmed they don't know what in the world this is, or this is, or this is, and that's not true. The Pentagon actually has never ever said that. So I was like, where did you get that from? And I think
that's a huge error. That's a huge error.
Yeah, and that's indicative of all media coverage of this. It's fast. It's be first. Not necessarily right. Be first. There's this competition going on, and I've been silent about most of it, leading up until this orgy that's developed. This big top mentality, and media. I've seen it across the board where they show the gimbal video and they're like, "Here's the 2004 Tic Tac" in media, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. And this, actually, and the public is supposed to be informed about the facts,
Right.
and it's just this runaway horse at this point. And I'm trying. So basically, let me go back. I believe in UFOs. I believe in UAP. I'm there with everyone, and I love everyone. What I'm trying to do is challenge people's minds of going, oh, right, we are supposed to be thinking about this. We are supposed to be paying attention to this. That's so.
Yeah. Hey, Steven, I have a question for you. So there's a thing called the Betteridge's Law of Headlines, and that's kind of the concept of if you're reading the newspaper and you read an article that you're an expert on, you're gonna find a lot of errors because there's a lot of errors in newspapers apparently. If you're an expert, you're gonna spot them. So I wonder do you think that maybe we're just kind of seeing that because we all are very deep into this subject, or do you think that there's more errors in this era of reporting than there is in maybe other areas?
Well, sure. I mean, if you're talking about nuances or things like that, but if you're a major media company and you say the Pentagon said this when they didn't, that's not something that only experts really should be paying attention to. You shouldn't misquote the U.S.
Pentagon
government. You can't say the government said this.
Hard to argue with that.
I look at that as a bigger error than that. I can get a lot of these media companies are playing catch up, right? They're playing catch up, and they're going, "Who the hell do we talk to?"
Right?
Because we don't know. We don't know. We haven't been following this for years. So who has been following this 2 years? And just a Google search, you're going to get people like Lou. You're going to get people like Jeremy. You're going to get people maybe like Mick if they want a counter argument. You're going to get, and so they keep going to those same people, and they're like, let's let this person speak for us because we don't really know, Right. And so they bring in a Jeremy, and look, I don't want. Can I get even more controversial?
Sure, man.
Do your thing, brother.
Look, like I said, we cleared the UCR show runway for your C-37 of hot takes. So, dude, unload. Do your thing. Look, we might have some pushback for you, but yeah, dude, it's a free country. Do what you want.
Nothing good ever happened after somebody says it's a free country. Just so you know. But go ahead, Steven.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I don't want people to take this completely the wrong way, but you more or less can take it directly as I'm about to say it. It reminded me. Do you remember Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani?
Yes.
Getting up with Rudy's hair is melting. and they're talking about like all these conspiracy theories and like all this crazy stuff, and like they were getting pressed, and like these guys had a huge following of like rabid fans. Like there were huge like QAnon type Rudy fans and Trump fans, and it was just this like cornucopia of just like unrestrained crazy, right? And the real media, the real journalists were hypercritical of it. I mean, hypercritical of it. They were digging and every fact. They were like, "This is nuts.
Right.
That's crazy." And at some point, they were like, "We're done. We're not even covering this shit anymore." You know, I see a lot of similarities. This is me as a kind of an outsider looking at everything. It's almost like the same thing is happening, except that criticism isn't necessarily happening. You know, people making outlandish, extraordinary claims, like saying the election was stolen, deserve critical questions and critical inquiry, and I just don't see it. So I want more of that.
So you're saying,
you're
saying we've kind of like stepped into the circus here, right? Like, so it's just all these major media companies are now pitching their tents in the UFO circus, and they're just kind of having fun and reporting on it from like this big top perspective, but other areas of the news don't get covered in the same way. But my question for you is, obviously there is bias in the news media. What's the UFO bias?
Well, the UFO bias is because there isn't a foundation yet in media. Like you don't see media companies with like a UFO beat or UFO vertical yet. You know, you have your defense.
You got a basement office, bro.
Yeah.
We're not vertical. We're down there. We're down. I'm in the basement. And
That's fair. There's no windows down there.
There's no windows. It's not vertical. So that hasn't really been established. But where it exists is among us. So we do actually control this conversation. The ufologists, the UFO believers, the activists, the whistleblowers, the experts, the mathematicians, the astrophysicists. Collectively, we actually do control this conversation. And we guide where that media coverage goes. And right now, it's copying and pasting everything that Jeremy releases of like, well, here's another UFO. Check out that shit. Next, hey, there's another UFO. Pretty sweet. Next, here's another UFO. It's just like that's if you read the articles, like Jeremy went on I think 90. Yeah, it was actually I have it written down. He went down on 97% of all news channels on planet Earth. And talked about these UFO videos, these extraordinary UFO videos, and the news people were like, "Oh yeah, wow," you know, and it was just like, wait a second, you know, no one's gonna say, hey, that's actually not really extraordinary at all. It's a dot, and it's going like this, and everyone's playing along because those. I mean, come on, man. The media is about clicks, click. Shocking new UFO footage shows X, Y, and Z. Click. It, you know, if you release an article that says, I mean, I released an article Sunday night or whatever it was, and it was about the headline of the article was like, you know, latest UFO footage, not that impressive. It was like the headline of the article I wrote.
Right.
No one really clicked on it. No one really clicked on it. Had I done the headline of like recent UFO footage shows, you know, possible act of war against U.S. military, everyone's going to click on that, you know?
Or you can cheat and you can ask the question, did this whatever cause an act of war? And then people can click and you can say no, you know, in the first paragraph.
Yeah.
Jane is all about the clicky headlines, you know.
I love it, and I think it plays like a part. Like, so I mean, if you're gonna get people interested in this, you got to get them to click, and a lot of people are struggling with Mick. Well, I guess it sounds like 50% of people are really angry at Mick West. And I wonder how much of that is kind of anger at maybe your own family members and friends who have been, skeptical throughout these years. Because I would say that Mick West probably represents maybe a vast majority of what people think when they do see these videos of just lights and how is that an alien spaceship. They're probably just as unimpressed. And yeah, so I think that would just kind of be my take on the debate that was happening earlier. And I think it's so good that you guys are facilitating that, because
I mean, I just want to say quickly one thing about that is that, one of the reasons I push on Mick and I say, when he says not aliens, or he says the things that are emphatic, that he comes back later and says, well, I actually shouldn't have been, that direct or opinionated on that particular matter, because you do have a lot of people who are either coming from an experience or perspective. Like when we bring Mick on, we get a lot of flack. People literally reach out to us and say, you guys are you're pulling the argument back. But Greenstreet, you're saying the opposite thing. You're saying we need to grab the reins a little bit, because we can't just force disclosure on people if none of us know what that is. None of us have the data. We want more data, and that's what we must demand. And I think that the more voices we hear and the more perspectives we get, the more we can pressure people to push for that data. And it's all so frustrating, my man.
And also, hey, Greenstreet, down is still vertical.
I disagree.
Oh, I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, I agree. I got a lot of flack the last week and it was curious. I was almost probing, no pun intended. I was probing just to see how people would react. So, on Reddit, they posted a video where someone said, there's an extraordinary amount of evidence that UFOs are basically otherworldly. And all I asked was, what evidence? And people lost their minds. And I see this. I see the same thing on Twitter where I'm like, okay, what? Hey, Greenstreet, watch this video. It shows you everything you need to see. And I'll go, what does it show?
Yeah.
And then they'll just get angry and short circuit. So what we just watched with Mick in Kent is exactly it's that scene in Ghost where they're making the pottery, man. Where
oh my God! Somebody please make that meme. Who's making the meme? I mean, last week it was an ice cream truck with Susan Goff. This week it's Mick West and Ken By doing the ghost scene. I mean, what is going on with this show? I love it though.
I also want to know. Wait, no, real quick. Yeah. What else is going on with this show when our own producer says people are wasting their time arguing while they should be doing more FOIA requests? Our own producer is telling us to shut the up.
Hey man, but
Ghost. This is
yeah, but basically what I was saying, it's like,
oh my God,
it's like it's two individuals crafting and molding, working together to mold something, rather than just flinging or just go, instead of going to a museum and just looking at a sculpture, something that's identified. We're actually coming together and creating something and visualizing something, and we're embodying something. We're making something come to light little by little, but we shouldn't just give up. And when you start saying it's alien, well, it's aliens.
Yeah.
Well, okay, what further do we have to go if that's your position?
But isn't that isn't that a good thing though? Because here's I'm just gonna give putting myself in the shoes and trying to put a different perspective on the other side of this, right? My 10-year-old goddaughter was watching the Discovery Channel special, and it started freaking her out. She was genuinely concerned. She was like, are we going to get invaded? Are aliens coming? Are they real? These were real visceral questions from a 10-year-old who was genuinely concerned. And it got me to thinking, oh, shit. Like, I never thought of what the message needs to look like, because kids are going to be seeing this, and they're going to have a lot of look, dude. The idea of a gray alien now coming into my room still terrifies the hell out of me, and I'm 40 years old. You know, so like, put that on the plate of a 10-year-old. I think that's not fair. Like, there's got to be a better way to do it. But what I will say, you know, my sister, who's got nothing to do with this, like, they saw it and they're like, they came to me and they're like, what's going on? And then I can provide them, and hopefully this is what it gets them asking the questions. And then they look for people who could try and answer them the best they can. And of course, they're going to rely on the people they trust most, right? And hopefully that person is knowledgeable about the topic, where they're not feeding them, you know, Antarctic bases under, alien bases under Antarctic shelf, you know? So like, it's a double-edged sword, you know? Like, the thing I don't like about Bob Lazar is, it may not be true. It probably isn't. But the thing that I love about Bob Lazar is that he inspires people to look into this, you know? So and hopefully, and I think what's going to happen, and I'm hoping this is sort of the trend, is that the good data outweighs the sensational data. So we got two sensational pieces, one TMZ, one Discovery Channel. But we preface that with, you know, Eric Weinstein's apology. We preface that with, the New York Post revealing some new stuff. We preface that with the 60 Minutes interview. We preface that with, Ezra Klein writing an article about this. The New Yorker writing like, there have been some really wonderful thought out pieces that still have facts wrong, but they're putting the hypothesis out there for people to consume. And then what I'm hoping is, because there's going to be a new wave of curiosity, that when they start to go looking, I'm hoping they'll find the people that are not giving them answers. They're finding the people that make them think. They're finding the Steven Greenstreet. They're finding the Andy McGrillen. They're finding, the clear thinkers in this topic, and hopefully be put on a right path to start thinking about this in a more logical way, but still having the wonder, the curiosity. So, am I playing just devil's advocate? Am I reaching on that?
Well, I love your optimism, man. I love your optimism that people will continue on a path, that they will read beyond the headline. They'll see a headline and go, oh, I'm going to do my own research and dig into this and get to the bottom of this. And I'm going to read multiple articles, and I'm going to receive multiple podcasts and things like that. I love that optimism. I don't share your optimism. I think we exist in a headline reading culture for the most part, a knee-jerk reaction to headlines. But without reading articles, yeah.
Well, what I would say though is that I would say the more logical, nuanced articles and media far outweighs the sensational, at least on a national level. I think it's like 8-2. For every 10 articles that are written, I would say 8 of them are providing proper nuanced discussion, maybe with a fact or wrong here and there, and then the 20% that's left over is sensationalizing it. And I think that 20% gets a lot of eyeballs, it gets a lot of people into the circus tent, and then it's unfortunately on the ticket holder of the circus to decide, okay, what attraction am I going to go to first? So I mean,
that's a really good point. And I think maybe part of Steven's not optimism, his pessimism for this subject comes from the fact that first they're going to go to Bob Lazar, and then they're going to go. It's like, how long is it going to take them to get to a point where we're actually thinking about this critically versus playing with our imaginations?
I think it's going to be the same that it took for me. It might take them 5 to 10 years, but here's the thing. If you're listening to charlatans, and I'm not naming anybody as a charlatan, let's be clear here. But if you're listening to charlatans, I feel like first year, yeah, second year, maybe you're still in there, third, fourth, fifth, sixth year, I don't think you're as hardcore behind that charlatan.
Are you sure?
Well, it depends on the cult we're talking about. But
I'm thinking we have different paths, and there's not going to be this one-way path. You're going to have this
Right.
Greer, you're going to have the Louis Elizondo, you know, the people that are in the middle. And I think what we should just hope is that we in this community and wherever we go, we can grow the most reasonable conversation where Mick West can still argue, you know, with Kent, and we can have that. And I think there can always be a space for that. But I don't think that I'm optimistic that it will go in one direction. And I don't think that it can, something this big. And I think ultimately people are going to believe what they want to believe. And aliens are scary, whether you're 9 years old or you're 36. I have a 9-year-old, and I've been researching UFOs since he was born, and he's not convinced aliens are real. And I'm like, that's completely fair. Like all we're seeing, you know, yes, we want to look at the totality of it, but also that's dangerous, right? Because when I'm looking at a single UFO video, all I want to look at is that single UFO video. If you're also telling me about the gray aliens and then, you know, Men in Black and everything, you know, so again, we need Mick West to be looking at just like one video at a time. Mm-hmm. And I think Mick West following will increase, and so will Stevens, and so will Luis's, so it'll all just keep growing and growing.
Well, and I think this is why we wanted to do the big phone home too, right? So we could get to that next level of pushing for more data, and we're always trying to get people on that Ferris wheel, right? So if Lou and I have a part of this tent, it is literally to fling shit at the Pentagon and get them to give us the. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. Give us the effing data. That's all we want.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I also like to add, you know, some conspiracy theories is obvious that if you believe in them, that's detrimental, like, you know, election fraud and stuff like that. Is there a real downside to people having maybe a misplaced belief in aliens?
Yeah,
I'm sure there is, but it's not as clear, I think.
All right.
Steven.
All right, so aliens, just the general idea of aliens. Sure. I mean, I actually don't want to say. I actually think it's rad if you enjoy something. If something gives you enjoyment and stimulates you, I'm not here to like say, well, you shouldn't have enjoyed that. I think it's awesome that people are out there enjoying stuff and letting their heart guide them to wherever they're going. What I'm saying is I believe that there is hard evidence that a lot of the recent UFO cases over the last 10, 15, maybe even more years point to an adversarial presence on our shores and even over our homeland, and in many cases with impunity. Now, if that went wide, if that went everywhere, New York Times, CNN, everywhere, Russia is flying over Virginia Navy bases and spying on it with impunity the last 10 years. Would people immediately go look at what Bob Lazar has to say? Would they immediately go to read what like Whitley Strieber has to say? Or would they go to the Pentagon and to the president and say, what the hell are you guys doing? Where would the anger, where would the attention be paid? Right? It would be towards the government, right? So if that was the case, which I believe in many cases it is, I think the government's gotten pretty lucky that people are talking about aliens and that they're talking about extraterrestrial craft, interdimensional X, Y, and Z, because that's what people are focused on. They're not focused on the Navy has reports from 2015 and 2014 and 2013 that say unknown, quote, balloon type objects, unknown, quote, quadcopter type drone objects were flying over, you know, military bases and military airspace. Those things are getting thrown and branded in the same bucket as the Tic Tac, as the like Belgian triangle, as the Phoenix lights, and they shouldn't be. There's a nuance here. Something else is going on. I'm sure of it. I am sure of it. That something else is going on here. Something doesn't smell right to me. Something isn't passing the smell test to me. And I think if you take more than 5 minutes and just pull back, sit back, and think about it, something feels weird about this. It's really bizarre. And I go back to the QAnon thing. It was almost an anthropological study when you look at QAnon, right? And how that formed and how those believers got so set in what they believed in and who profited off of that. You know, it's like really bizarre. Let me let me ask this question. Anyone can answer. The intelligence community, they work on what currency? What power? Where do they get their power?
Information.
Information. Who controls the information right now when it comes to the last 4 years of UFOs? Who's releasing the information? Is it the intelligence community or is it other?
Other.
So you have to, by that logic, assuming that it's true, that all of this otherworldly stuff is true, the intelligence community has lost control of their number one currency. They've lost control of the only thing they're supposed to do. They suck at their job.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to sit back, you have to then say, okay, so the greatest military in the world, the greatest, darkest, blackest intelligence community in the world, they suddenly suck. Does that make sense to you? Or is something else is something else going on? Do they have control of this? And if they have control of this, then are there clues to what's going on right now?
Jane, we're going to get, let's get Jane's final thoughts because I got to get her out of here. Any thoughts on what Steven just said?
No, I just think that's a really, really good question. And I think probably they, whoever they are, yes, do have some control still. Like I say, I just don't think a lot of what's happened lately, it's been a total accident or just like a total dropping of the ball. But we'll see. But this was really fun. Thanks for having me on as usual. Chat's been great.
Thank you so much for stopping
Bye,
by. It's
Jane.
nice to
Thank
see
you. Make
on
sure you
Friday.
follow Jane.
Yeah. Go search UFO Jane on YouTube everywhere. I'm everywhere. So
Awesome. Thank you, Jane. We'll see
Thanks,
you
Jane.
Wednesday.
I have a comment, if I could.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned intelligence and that being the commodity, right? You've got the FBI, the CIA. Those are intelligence agencies, and they trade in the truth, or they trade in information. But you also have black ops programs, right? And so black ops programs don't talk to the CIA. The black ops buried in the DOE don't talk to the CIA or the FBI. So I guess I'm struggling to understand what you're ultimately saying here, because all of these agencies, they fucking hate each other and they don't share and they compartmentalize. And so you're right in that information gets away from them, but I don't think the FBI and the CIA trade in information. Their job is to gather information on our adversaries, correct?
Well, define adversaries, because according to Ed Snowden, that definition gets kind of murky.
Right.
Well, okay, so yeah, of course, black projects, but I'm working on the hypothesis. I'm entertaining for a second that these are aliens.
Okay.
And or not human technology.
Right. Interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, not human, whatever. Okay.
Future travelers.
Future travelers. Got it.
The other bucket.
Yep.
And I'm also working on the assumption, I'll assume, that this has been going on for decades, if not hundreds of years, if not millennia.
Okay.
And that Project Blue Book, they're downplaying, they're suppressing, they're hiding, the decades of conspiracy theories are true. All of that's been true, that they've been keeping a lid on this. And now all of a sudden, for the last 4 years, the cork has popped off and the information's getting out. Finally, disclosure is happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
That logic would infer that despite their best efforts for decades, their best whatever for decades, it's out of their control now. It's now out. It's coming out. It's now being disclosed. Disclosure is happening. That which they didn't want to happen is now happening. Whoever they are, black projects, whoever. So I'm working on that assumption. So if you do believe all of those things, then you also have to believe that they either screwed up, that they've lost control of the conversation. They've lost control of the information, and the information is now coming out. So you have to assume that. Or you have to assume that they're the catalyst.
Right.
That if this was ever to come out, it was going to come from them. So I see it like that. And that's something that I don't think not many people are thinking about. So it's either our blackest, darkest secrets that have been successfully suppressed and covered up for decades, if not hundreds of years, all of a sudden, aren't working anymore, that they're not successful anymore. They aren't good anymore, or they're the catalyst for this. And if so, what's up with that? Why?
Right. What do you think? Why do you think?
Me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, it's unknown. So I have not one theory, but a variety, because I can't just say one thing. What I said previously is about a failure, an intelligence failure that may be extreme, potentially on the level of 9/11, with our adversaries. And I acknowledge, let me preface it, I acknowledge unique, unexplainable, crazy, seemingly otherworldly UFOs. I acknowledge those. I think those cases exist. I think the Tic Tac could be potentially an example of that. But a lot of the recent cases, well documented, the stuff's there, seems to show that we could be getting spied on, if not worse, right off our coasts, right over our infrastructure facilities, right over our anti-ballistic missile sites by our adversaries. And I think it's weird that no one is looking at that. It's almost like the conversation's like, hey, don't even look at those UFOs. It's just unknown. We don't know. It's so if someone was to go to the someone's got to fall on their sword eventually. If that's the case, it's going to have to come out, that someone wasn't paying attention and this actually happened and someone let that happen. Who the hell was that? Right. That person's going to pay. Is my name? Are they close? Or is my name in the press yet? No, they're talking about aliens still. Oh, okay, whew, thank God.
Yeah. I got you. I hear you.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So part of me thinks something is happening, perhaps there. That wouldn't surprise me at all. This seems completely consistent with counterintelligence operations.
Mm-hmm. Well, it feels a little bit kind of like the Richard Doty thing, but way more sophisticated. And it's got to be a possibility that's put out there. This idea that, hey, it's better people are talking about UFOs and aliens because now we could go fly our neat little plane, that we're not going to release for the next 25 years. And if people are talking about this, that means that maybe the Russians think it's UFOs too, or the Chinese thinks it's UFOs too. And it also, like you said, covers for the fact really nicely that this is a huge security blunder. I don't think it's at this. I don't think saying maybe there are UFO, like Chinese and Russian drones over our sensitive nuclear bases. There is. That's to me, that's a fact. Like, they've been spying on us and we've been spying on them. And this is something that's been going on for a long time. What do you got, Steven?
Okay, so another thing from the UFO report is in their definition of what they think, in one of the 5 buckets, they said, it could be X, Y, and Z, or non-government organizations or groups. Right. Some of these could be from non-government organizations or groups.
Private sector stuff.
No, the first thing that hit me was the recent reports just a few months ago of the cartel. The cartels in Mexico and South America are dumping tons of money into new drone technology, weird new drone technology, potentially high-tech drone technology to transfer drugs and to do surveillance. And if you look at the news about recently in Arizona, the border control and the police helicopters were outrun by some weird-looking drone. They referred to it as a drone. It had, it looked like a drone. It was a drone, but they said it performed unlike any other drone. It was spinning circles around the helicopter, and it was at its border control. And when you look at a lot of these documented cases, like border patrol, and it's like, oh, and then the UAP report says non-governmental organizations. I thought cartel immediately, and I was like, holy crap! There's a security breach at our border that we're not aware of, and it's hubris because the Pentagon is always preparing for big, challenges, big weapons with big contracts. They're not looking at balloons. They're not looking at little drones. I think they're behind on that, and they've been caught with their pants down.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And it's also, the problem is, though, even let's say it's not a border agent. Let's say it's a military base that's close to the border. and military members are seeing these things, I think they're not reporting them. And the drug dealers know that. You know, the people running the drones know that no one is going to say shit because it looks weird. So it's like, hey, if we're going to make drones, make them look as weird as you fucking possibly can. So that way it's almost a guarantee that if somebody in an F-16 plane or somebody in a military helicopter or somebody sitting on the ground looking at it, you know, they're not going to say anything because they know the stigma within that security apparatus is so strong that they're just not going to say anything. And so now this little tiny drone has become a really big problem because some of these drones, and shout out to Jeremy McGowan, even though, you know, whatever. He pointed out in a lot of really wonderful cases, these drones can carry some pretty massive payloads. You know, you fly a swarm of these things, say, over Santa Monica Pier, and you just start dropping balloons with anthrax in them, you've got a major problem. And the Air Force isn't talking about it. The Department of Defense isn't talking about it. Susan Goff isn't talking about it. Nobody's talking about it. And so, like, I think it's kind of like, well, shit, man, keep pumping that UFO thing until we can figure this out. You know, so that's something that we have to consider. We have to put it on the table. Why? Because, God damn it, this government is capable of it. They've done it to us before. And this is why I constantly stress that this topic is a bipartisan issue. Because now I can take this to a senator and I can ask them. And the beautiful thing about this is, if all of it, I think, was drug running drones or Chinese or Russian drones, somebody would have put a nip in the butt on some. This is getting to a point now where it's like, okay, the story's getting out of control. Like, we're going to have to walk some of this stuff back. And I think it's getting to a point where it's going to be too late. You know, and is that a good thing? I mean, does the military want that? Or is that going to cause more headaches for Congress? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be organizing an event to make sure everybody calls Congress and demands congressional hearings, because I want the United States, the American people, to hear Alex Dietrich, David Fravor, you know, Ryan Graves, and now Underwood. I want them to hear these people tell their story in a clear, concise, uninterrupted way for the American lawmakers. Like, I think that's important. And if we get to that point, I don't know if that drone argument holds as much water as it, I think, maybe does right now. But it's scary, dude. The thing with this topic, and it's like, you could take this with any topic. There are going to be views and opinions on all of it. I always think that the truth is somewhere in the middle. It always ends up being that, you know, I don't think it's aliens, but I definitely don't think it's all Russian and Chinese. There's there's truth in both of those things.
I just another thing I'll bring up, because I don't see it brought up at all, is, in between 2006 and 2010, a lot of defense writers, tech writers, Wired included, everyone, there was a slew of articles talking about this new Air Force tech that was out there. It was a hologram tech. And the hologram tech, it's quoted, I believe, in a Wired article in 2006, is they had the ability to project complete 3D solid images over the enemy to confuse them about where the allies were, and whether it was aircraft, whether it was the image of a god in the clouds. They quote specific potentialities of this Air Force tech, and there's a specific name for it, and I'm forgetting it. But in 2010, coverage stops. Yeah. Like, coverage stops, and from what I've just briefly researched, it's because it went underground. It went super black skunk works, this technology. And so no one's digging. And who's been most silent out of all the military branches?
The Air Force.
Air Force has been completely silent. Yeah. Who was, Fravor notwithstanding, who do Navy witnesses say came aboard the Nimitz 30 minutes after the Tic Tac site?
It was the Air Force.
Oh,
people in Air Force uniforms.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, okay, that's critical thinking. Those are dots, and you can start connecting them, and maybe they don't lead anywhere. But
they have to be mentioned.
out.
They have to be talked about. No, they have to be put on the table, Steven. And I think that's what you're doing.
Right.
And what I'm going to say is, I think, and here's where my optimism comes from. I think long form. What are we looking at here? Holographic technology?
Yeah. Steven's totally right. This is from 2008. Yeah.
Evaluation
we're studying it.
In close air support mission planning execute. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Huh.
What I was going to say was shit, I can't remember. What was I saying?
Something about holographs?
No, that's what rather just popped up.
Sorry, Lou.
What did
That's okay.
What did the DIA scientists see at Skinwalker Ranch?
Did we? Were we talking about that?
That's what we're talking about?
What did? No. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask that question.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, ask it again. What was the question?
What did the DIA scientists? What has been reported that a DIA scientist saw at Skinwalker Ranch?
A portal?
Eric.
What did he see at that made him go to Harry Reid, and because of that, Harry Reid formed ATIC? The story goes that a DIA scientist was invited himself essentially to Skinwalker Ranch, and while at Skinwalker Ranch, he saw a 3D Mobius strip appear in front of him, change form, almost like a hologram, and then it disappeared. He was so shocked by this that he went back and was just like, "We need to investigate this." And then out of that, Harry Reid got interested and says, "Hell yeah, we should investigate this." And that was the birth of ATIC, a hologram. Well, I'm not going to say it was a hologram, but a holographic type object.
Right. It's interesting.
Well, what I was going to say, the thing that gives me so much optimism, Steven, is long form conversation and how popular it's become. Because I think a lot of folks, at least in my generation, I don't trust network news. I don't go to network news for my opinions ever. It's a landmine of really bad information, and how I know that the topic that has confirmed it for me is UFOs. They screw it up all the time. They get it wrong all the time, man. And I'm like, see, this is exactly why I don't watch the news. Like, because they can't get it right. And you got Jake Tapper talking on Ellen and calling them blue Tic Tacs, and they're not even playing the right video as he's talking about a Tic Tac. Like, it's just like, dude, you're Jake Tapper. Like, you don't know the color of a Tic Tac? Like, what's happening, So, but at the same time, I got to step back and say, well, no matter how much I bitch and complain, Jake Tapper's going to say that. Either way, that's coming out of his mouth. So I might as well take whatever positive I can out of it, inject it into either what I'm talking about or our shows. But I think like this time we're living in, of like where you've got podcasts like Joe Rogan, you've got the Flagrant 2 podcast, you've got all these wonderful, really independent thinkers, and they're the biggest shows on the planet because people are yearning for good information. And I think that's why I really don't give a shit when TMZ or CNN or the Discovery Channel does a show, because I'm like, yeah, people are going to be watching this. They probably don't know much, but hopefully it gets them into a point where, hey, maybe they find a long-form conversation between Mick West and Kent By, and they enjoy it, and then they get more and better information, and then they find you, and they get these nuances and different ideas as to what we could be dealing with and how to think more critically. So, that's where my optimism comes
I love
from.
that. I love it. And I love that we need people like you, Lou, and Michael. And rather, we need you guys. Like it's not. Otherwise, the whole thing becomes unbalanced. Right. Like it's. And so I just felt like there was a little bit of an unbalance lately into the woo category, and I felt like just pulling back the reins and saying like, hey, what about this Air Force technology that no one's talking about? What about these drones that the cartel could be flying. So anyway, I gotta go, guys. But
yeah, man. Hey, thank
really
you so
appreciate
damn
it.
much
Thank you
for stopping by and giving us your nuance, man. Giving us your perspective. You're a really smart dude, and I wanted everybody to be like, answer the question. You know, why was Greenstreet so hot? I think we got a good answer to that. And and hopefully we put some people in your shoes. You know, again, remember, this is a journalist, you guys. He's putting his neck out there professionally, and it upsets him when he sees crazy shit that's not accurate. So I get it.
Thank you, Steven.
Yeah, happy 4th of July, guys.
Yeah, man.
Make sure you follow us. Don't forget, if you didn't get to hang out with Steven on Twitter when he was just dripping on shit, make sure you follow him on Twitter at Middle of Mayhem. Hit him up on Twitter.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Buddy.
Thanks, Steven.
Dude.
What a show.
What a show. I mean, we're 20 minutes over. We blew through all of our resets. Damn, that was awesome. Oh, and by the way, we have an exit interview or an exit poll, and I think this is going to shock some people. So, exit poll on we asked at the beginning of the debate who won the debate or who's winning the debate, and then when the debate was over, I put another poll up saying, okay, exit poll, who won, Mick or Kent? So Team Kent, wow, it just became even. It was like literally a second ago, it was leaning Team Mick, but there's 157 votes, and it's straight down the middle. It's 50-50. 50. Okay, wait. We got another couple more votes. It's 51% Team Mick, 49% Team Kent.
Oh, shit.
Is that officially a draw?
I think because you have to look at the statistical margin of error, because we didn't have, because you need at least 500 votes to get I think the most minimum statistical validity.
Well, we don't have 500 people in the chat.
My point is, I think it's 50-50.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a good thing, right?
I don't know what it means, bro. What do you mean? Analyze it?
No, I'm just saying. I just look, man. This is a show, right? That just I don't want to call it a UFO show. I want to call it more of a critical thinking show. But
about UAP and UFO. About
UAPs. We concentrate a lot on UAPs on this channel, obviously, right? But I do find it fascinating that this audience, one half thought, Ken's got this, and then after it was over, it was like, it's 50-50. Or it's, let's go back and look at it one more time. 51% Team Mick, 49. So he won at the beginning, lost by a really slim margin at the end, but the margin on the win on the front end was bigger. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm willing to call it a draw.
I think he called it a draw.
I'm going to call it a draw. Kent's backstage. Kent, is a draw fair?
Should we pop Kent in real quick?
Let's pop him in real quick.
For me, I don't necessarily care who won or lost. For me, it was an exercise for me to sort of do this catharsis of all these things that I was angry about.
But that wasn't the question, Mick. Did you win or lose? No, I'm kidding.
I feel like I was successful and able to point out my two main points, which is that Mick makes judgments beyond the evidence, and that he doesn't consider the broader context, and that's a repeat throughout all of his analysis. And I was happy to hear that he conceded that. So for me, that's a win. It was
the problem is Rather won't concede it. Go ahead, Rather.
We're giving a little unfair to give Kent the end word without a rebuttal right here, right?
For Mick.
Well, you kind of are Mick West representative on the show.
I think it's a very complex subject. I think that Steven Greenstreet made some awesome points. It's a very complex thing, and it's hard to get right, and it's hard to. It's easy to trip yourself up and make statements that you will regret down the line. And I think that discussions like we had in the first hour were how we resolve that kind of stuff.
Like saying it's aliens, or it's not aliens, or it's drones, or it's not drone. Like none of us know.
Yeah, and also though, to the other point, you need to read in context, and you don't need to have such a knee-jerk reaction when someone does say that on Twitter, because let's have a conversation. Let's not just do finger pointing.
To me, I think it's sort of some people will say, well, it's just linguistic bickering, but I think that's actually a deeper reflection of a worldview, which kind of mimics the rhetoric is mimicking a deeper worldview that there's ways which Mick would sort of reinforce that no, that's actually what he believes. Like as an example, I believe 100% sort of debunked this thing. I'm like, that's like
Sorry, Kent. I say that Luis Elizondo does the same thing.
I don't know if I would say I have 100% confidence in anything. I mean, it's like I always try to leave some doubt that like I might be wrong, and so
you might be wrong. Right.
That's that kind of like it's a difference, I think, between debunking and skepticism. Skepticism, like I said, is sort of like trying to have a suspension of judgment. Debunking is actually the opposite of suspension of judgment. It's actively disbelieving. I think in that active disbelief, it can create a sort of confirmation bias. Anyway, I don't want to like.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't think that Mick does that though.
Well, I mean,
but that's back. Maybe next Friday.
Mick's not here, so I don't. I know.
No. Listen.
But I feel happy. I wouldn't have done what I did with this slideshow. I put together all these slides with references and with like appendix with like references to the ethical skeptic, to articles in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I just want to have a deeper discourse. Like I want to have more people having those type of dialectics, because I think I was hungry for that type of like deep engagement to really challenge Mick on some of these things. And I often don't hear people really stand up to some of the things that I want to hear stand up. And I think as a result, there's a lot of things I was surprised that he had a response and I didn't have a counter, because it's like I didn't have enough evidence, and he could be wrong. So I conceded in that moment, because there's a lot of things that I don't know.
Well, so, I gotta tell you, Kent, you by far and away, and I haven't seen every Mick West interview, but I think you by far and away presented the argument from the other side to him in the absolute best way, because you used his own words and you presented it in a really nice, concise format. And I honestly, I think we need to have you guys on for part 2, because
I don't know if there's any more left to debate.
It's undecided. Well, there might not be.
No. Mick West gets to go pull up all your old tweets, and he gets.
I don't think he'll go that far.
Regardless of what you believe, it was a very interesting and entertaining discussion, folks.
It was absolutely one of the best Mick West discussions
awesome.
I've heard.
Thank you, Ken.
And you helped provide that, man. And I think people are going to come back to this conversation, and they're going to say, hey, this is the way this needs to be talked about. I thought your presentation was beautiful, man. If I'm going to agree, if I'm going to vote, I'm going to vote Kent by, right? Because I think the evidence, the totality of it, eventually is going to swing in your direction. I truly believe that. But at the same time, I could also say to myself, hey, Kent by could be wrong. I could be wrong. And if that's the case, we have to be okay with that.
Either way,
we have to be able to move on.
Right. Either way, Anna Arena is correct. A duo show with Kent and Mick would be very funny, like an Odd Couple sitcom. I think that would be.
Jesus,
that's the show.
Like
that's
Perfect Strangers.
Yes. It's like the Fox and Mulder.
Yes. If
NBC,
anyone's right, it's Anna.
NBC, let's reboot Perfect Strangers.
I'm going to make one sort of comment, which is that, sort of the metric of who wins. For me, it's not so much if Mick won or if I won.
Yeah.
If there was like one person who changed their mind, and even if they believed in the ET hypothesis or believed in everything, if Mick was able to give like an argument to change their mind, or if I was able to change someone who had a little bit more leaning towards Mick, and I think that's where like just the whole of the opposites of the paradox, and to really be comfortable in not knowing. And I try to like reach that. For me, that's sort of the metric. If there's anybody that changed their mind.
Yeah, that's the metric. That's the metric, and maybe next time that'll be the poll.
Well, but
how many people change their minds?
Wait. Why is that valuable? Why is just changing your mind valuable?
Because it's making you think in a different way.
Yeah,
sure, but wait a second. But now now somebody convinced me without all the data that they're right. Me changing my mind just shows you that I'm willing to believe the person who is more like me, or like obviously your point is it's got to be the argument that changes their mind. But if we're all working with incomplete data, then why is it valuable to change?
You're right. There should be no minds changing. I think a better way to phrase it is getting people to think differently, a little more critically.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes, you walk away thinking more critically. Fan-fucking-tastic.
No, I think the whole point of who won, who lost, it's just stemming from this stupid poll I put up. That's where this is coming from. I think we're all on the same page here. It's just the poll completely ruined the good nature of this conversation.
I sent out a tweet and said one of the things I wanted to really get Mick to be was a little bit more skeptical, and what I meant was that he sometimes debunks and believes things that go above and beyond. So I, in some ways, was doing this polarity shift of trying to be more skeptical and trying to encourage Mick to be more skeptical. I think we should all be more skeptical, and know what we can and cannot know based upon what evidence we have, which we don't have enough evidence to be making as declarative as conclusions as Mick is doing. Again, I don't want to sort of like color the overall debate because Mick's not here, and to have him. But that was my intention, was to at least just present some of this information, but also for everybody else to have a little bit more of this critical discourse.
Right on. Well, Ken, man, we appreciate you sticking in the back room here and giving us a couple more thoughts. But, dude, you've got a wonderful mind. I really loved your presentation. I can't wait to have you back on again. Can't wait to talk to you on the Singularity Lab. That's going to be a blast. So we'll see you soon, my friend. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Ciao.
Bye, Ken.
Mr. Rather, dude, thank you so much for the help today.
Awesome show.
Awesome show, right? That was fun, man. I had a great time. That was one of my favorite shows. This show gets better and better every time, you guys. If you haven't subscribed, if you haven't liked the channel, if you haven't shared, please do so. It helps tremendously. I think conversations like this are good for the community. You know, let's make a poll. Do you agree with me? Yes or no?
I want to make a poll asking our producer whether or not he should be telling us to shut up and go do FOIA requests during a live show.
Was he telling us to shut up? I don't know. I don't think so. All right, Rather, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, complex subject, and that's why we have this show.
Exactly. Any shows coming up for you, Rather?
Still,
what are you working on now?
To be determined. Should be another one coming up in about 2 weeks. But
you know
check out what I got out there already.
If you want to have influence on what Rather is focusing on, you should join us on Discord, because if you want to join us behind the scenes between every week, all you got to do is click on, I think that, Lou, the Discord link changed again. I don't know what the hell is wrong with it. I'm trying to fix it.
I'm so sick of Discord.
I have the most updated link. It's in my link tree down below, the Singularity Lab link tree. Just click it and then go to Discord. You can also go follow us at the Singularity Lab. We're going to have the head writer at the debrief coming next Tuesday, Christopher Plain. So you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure you're subscribed to the Singularity Lab, because between Lou and I's shows, we go 5 days a week, 5 nights a week. So make sure you're subscribed to this show right here. Click the subscribe button now and the bell, and follow the Singularity Lab and join us in Discord.
Yeah, definitely do that. All right, Rather, we will see you next week, my friend. Thank you for hanging out with us. And I also wanted to, real quick, I wanted to say thank you. This is your time to leave now, Rather. Did you leave yet? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I was looking at the live stream. I was looking for Artemis's full name in our chat here. But Artemis is now one of our, she's going to be helping on the show. She's our intern. Can we call her an intern? Is that fair?
She's our organizational marketing specialist.
There you go. That's a much better title. Much better title. Thank you, Michael. Michael, thanks for hanging out, buddy. We went a half hour over. Woo! Sorry about that.
What a blast, though.
Yeah, that was cool. All right. So we've told everybody what's coming up next week for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before you go?
I got nothing, bro. That was an amazing show. Thank you so much for joining us in the chat. You guys all rule. Make sure you support Lou on Patreon. His Patreon's link is below.
Please,
if you want to kick in 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes a month.
Check out the Patreon. Check out the Patreon. Check out the Patreon. Again, the Patreon doesn't give you access to any hidden show. There's no extra stuff. It's just a donation every month out of the goodness of your heart. If you like what you're seeing here, that Patreon goes a long way to making sure the cameras get better, the microphones get better, the show gets better. We have more time to do, book guests like this, so we can have interesting conversations.
We can pay our organizational and marketing specialists.
We could maybe pay her one day, although that's a long way off.
We're not there yet.
We're not nowhere near that. But we thank everybody who brings hands to the show and volunteers their time. And trust me when I tell you, it's a lot of people. A lot of people make this show happen, including you guys out there. So support wherever and however you can. It's truly appreciated. Before we go, I want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the tunes you hear on the show. Their SoundCloud link is in the description below, or Bandcamp link, is in the description below. And remember, you guys, Big Phone Home 2, it's happening. It is happening. We are literally getting the ball rolling on it. We decided last night that we're going to do this. So, like I said, 3 words: congressional UAP hearings. that's going to be our main request. That's going to be our main goal, to make as many phone calls to get congressional hearings going. Maybe the ball's already rolling on this. I have no idea, but all I'm going to do is try and add more snow to the ball that is rolling. So you guys are a big part in helping make that happen. So stay tuned here. I plan on having a lot more details. We're going to do a whole special show based around everything that we're going to be doing that day. We've got merch coming. I meant to show you guys pictures of the merch today, but we just went too long, so maybe next week. But with all of that said, you guys, thank you so much for coming aboard and getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week. Peace.